Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming to our Capital Markets Day here in London. It's really good to see so many familiar faces and also a good few new faces. So thanks very much for making the effort. Some of you, well, actually very few of you, saw us do our Capital Markets Day in Montreal in November. And I don't know how many of you would have been brave enough to watch the 3-hour video that emerged from that and is on our website. But just to let you know that this is not going to be a repeat of that Capital Markets Day. Then we focused very much on a couple of key themes. Number one, the integration that we undertake with all our acquisitions. And number two was the scale in which we're achieving now as a business. And for those of you that were able to come on the tour of our Montreal facility, I think that really hit home. What we're going to do here at this Capital Markets Day in London instead is to focus on two main areas of our business that we haven't really exposed you to in any depth thus far. Primarily, that is the game development business, which is an activity that we entered about 3 years ago, and marketing services, which we've been building up over the last couple of years. In both cases, we have experts from those business units that will take you through some case studies to really illustrate the amazing work that they're doing. We're also going to be covering off all 7 service lines in brief, just to give you a little bit of an update as to where they have got to during 2019 and where they're looking to go in 2020 and beyond. So we can't get through this Capital Markets Day without referring to the trading update that we announced at the end of January. Now, these, of course, are preliminary figures, and the full figures and the full results will be released at the end of March. But just to remind people of where we sit today as a business. So our revenues grew by about 30% to 326 million euros. Very pleasingly, though, organic growth, which strips out the effect of currency and so on, that was 15.5% growth in the year. Our adjusted EBITDA climbed 13% to 49.5 million euros, representing a margin of about 15%. Our PBT margin grew 8%, representing 41 million in absolute terms and a margin of about 12-13%. One number that I know did come as a little bit of surprise to some people was the net cash at the end of the year. Fortunately, I have my CFO to rely on to actually take you through the workings behind that later on in the session. But what I would say is that included in the 28 million of M&A spend is actually 15 million related to past acquisitions. So that was acquisitions prior to 2019. And essentially in that number of 18 million net debt, that implies a cash conversion rate of a very healthy 85%, which is in line with what we've delivered previously. And again, John will take you through the workings behind that, given that they are preliminary numbers at this stage. So as a business, we enter 2020 a better balanced business and higher up the value chain. Now, what do I mean by that? We measure balance as across our service lines. So you can see the mix of the donut. They're nicely sort of balanced segments. And each of those segments, each of those service lines actually acts on a different part of the development chain within game development as a whole and within game publishing. So that breeds sort of robustness into our business model. And in terms of the higher up the value chain services, now obviously a service like game development, where we're making part of games for our clients, or we're actually making the full game for our clients, those are going to be perceived as higher value than, say, our localization in our QA services. That doesn't necessarily make them better businesses, by the way, but they're certainly higher up the value chain. We're also seeing that value exposed in a number of ways in which we're operating. So increasingly, we're integrated in IT terms and in personnel terms with our clients. Either we've got people embedded in our client teams, we have dedicated operations around the world, or we're actually integrated in their development pipelines through connected IT systems. I think you guys see this picture year on year. We're trying not to make it look busier and busier. But what you do see is increasing numbers of colored dots associated with each location. So year after year, we prove to ourselves the ability to land in a geography, in a territory with a studio that we've either opened organically or that we've acquired, find that it's a really conducive location to do business. And by that, we mean it usually has access to talent, it's close to the client, and we're able to leverage the infrastructure that we've built there around the support services, the facilities management, HR, and so on, and seed in other services that we have within our group. And that's a very low friction process. We talk about keywords as this amazing sort of growth engine, which I firmly believe we're going to continue to be for some years to come. And the reason I say that is because we've chosen a path in an industry which benefits itself on a macro level from some very key driving forces. First of all, it is an industry which is fast growing in itself. The revenue from the content in games is growing 8% per annum, and is already something like a $150 billion market. There is this trend towards outsourcing, which is something we spotted 10 years ago when we set ourselves up to do what we've been doing, as clients struggle to cope with their increasingly complex environments. That's complexity of production, the size of games, the continuous nature of game development, and the number of devices on which games are being played and the way in which games are being distributed. All of that complexity is hard, and we are one way in which those clients of ours can try and simplify an otherwise very, very complicated environment. We're also seeing evidence now of supply chains becoming a little bit more structured in the video games industry. So what do I mean by that? What we've had in the past, and we're still living, it's still very much the sort of the norm to have our clients, whether they be a game developer or a game publisher, manage many tens, if not hundreds, of direct relationships for supply into their game development processes. So they might have 10 different art suppliers. They might have 10 or more different localization providers on a single game where everybody's doing a single language, for instance. Year after year, we see that consolidating, and our clients coming to us and asking us to basically provide all of the languages, or to provide all of the art or most of the art on an outsourced basis. And I think we're likely to see that continue. Again, it's one of the ways in which they can simplify life while ensuring quality and on-time delivery. The other thing we're seeing, and we made this point particularly clear in Montreal, is that scale begets scale. What does that mean? It's kind of like you have to build it in order for the client to use it. So a lot of our clients, the sort of accepted way of making games, for those companies that have been in the games industry for 20 plus years, has been to do everything themselves. So there's a very strong sort of attachment to doing everything internal. But you could see why they did that, because while they were doing that, they weren't creating suppliers of scale to which they would be comfortable outsourcing large chunks of business. Now, with companies like Keywords emerging with some considerable scale, those large companies feel more comfortable in putting work into our facilities. And then, of course, the fragmented industry. We've talked about this many times, but this is a highly fragmented industry on the supply side, and that creates opportunities for consolidation. And we typically have been buying something like 6 to 10 companies a year. We've been very selective in which businesses we buy. We're actually buying them in order to build this integrated platform. But that opportunity remains. That fragmentation is still there. It's not becoming more fragmented, but the fragmentation exists, and so we have opportunities to work with that fragmentation. As ourselves, what Keywords has built so far, we are unique in being able to provide the full end-to-end services for all stages along the life cycle of a video game on a service basis. So we have this integrated service platform with an international reach. Individual service lines are in themselves pillars for growth. So each service line has a growth opportunity and a growth objective. And within those service lines, you have individual studios, which also are thriving for growth. So all parts of Keywords are looking for growth and trying to satisfy client demand as best they can, while, of course, maintaining the good disciplines of profitability, etc. We're fortunate in that we've established over the years deep relationships, long-term relationships with pretty much all the top video game companies. We've established ourselves very close to our customers around the globe, which is still important in business. Even though we are connected through the internet and everything, there's no substitute for being able to pop on site at your clients and have a face-to-face meeting. And we've got these bridgeheads to talent around the globe, whether that's in Eastern Europe, whether it's in India, whether it's in China, whether it's in Japan or South America. Having access to talent is very important to us. Our industry needs that talent to create these very complex worlds, and not only create them, but of course maintain them in what is becoming ever more continuous form of entertainment, games as a service. At this point, I was going to hand over to a colleague of mine to start taking us through the first of 5 presentations on the service lines, which are designed to expose some of the drivers that are behind each of those businesses. Also let you understand a bit the barriers to entry that are increasingly being built as we establish some clear water between ourselves and the rest of the fragmented industry that surrounds us. Unfortunately, Ashley Liu, who would do a much better job of this first presentation today, she is grounded in China, along with most of the population in China. So she's not able to be with us in person, unfortunately. So I'm going to do the very best I can to fill her shoes and present this to you. And while I'm filling her shoes, I'm going to try not to break her heels in the process, because I'm a little bit heavier than she is. So I'm going to talk to you about art services. Now, it's a bit misleading. I think a lot of you will know that within art services, we also have a fledgling marketing services business tucked in there, and it's getting less and less fledgling-like. It's a fast-growing fledgling, let's put it this way, and at some point in the near future, it's going to leave the nest and create a service line of its own. So what is the art service line within Keywords? Today, we have 1,200 people, which does include the marketing services part of the organization. And essentially, we're providing art assets for the world's leading video games around the world. So these are concept art, 2D art, 3D art, animation, and so on. And most of this work goes into AAA console and PC games, but increasingly it's also going into high-end mobile games. So we operate at that sort of higher end of the quality spectrum. And time after time with all of our services, we find that there is a steady trend towards quality. So starting at the quality end of the spectrum, you find that you become, you capture the trend towards quality. So mobile games a few years ago had very basic 2D assets. Increasingly now they're using 3D art assets within mobile games, and that plays to our strengths. The business has grown substantially since we first entered the market in 2014 with the acquisition of Luxor Digital. As you can see, we've tried to separate out for all of these service lines the portion that is acquired business effectively in where we find ourselves in 2019, and that portion which is organic growth. Now, obviously, where we weren't present in the business in the first place, we can't have grown organically without having first acquired. So that's that picture on the top right. The other message to get across here is the opportunity within the business. So the art business, and we know we've substantially undersized some of these markets, and this is one of them. We sized the art market a while ago at about $1 billion. It's increasingly apparent to us that it's actually substantially larger than that. Most of the art up until, well, in fact, 10 years ago, this didn't really exist as an activity at all. 5 years ago, that was probably something like 30% outsourced. We're now up to about 50% outsourced. And it's an asset type, it's part of the game development cycle, which is increasingly being outsourced. And obviously, we are, actually today, I think we are the largest provider of art assets for video games in the world on an outsourced basis. So the market is coming towards us. This trend towards outsourcing is a big driver for art. In terms of looking at how we are increasingly differentiating ourselves and how that is creating some clear water between ourselves and some of our sort of smaller competitors. First one to point out to you is that our clients are increasingly integrating their production pipelines directly with our own. So in the past, even 3 years ago, 5 years ago, the normal model was client would effectively send us an Excel spreadsheet and say, hey, we want you to make 20 warriors, we want you to provide a whole bunch of trees, and we need a few houses or whatever it was. And we would go away and make these art assets, send them back to the client. We'd go backwards and forwards a couple of times, and then the client would accept them, and then they would do whatever they did to get them into their games. Now we're very often working with our clients in figuring out what art assets need to be built for each level of the game. We're then able to pass that work back to ourselves effectively. We create those art assets and we plug them straight back into the client's development environment in a fully integrated manner. Now that's the sort of way of working that you're not going to find with small art studios. It's a very heavy due diligence process from our clients to audit us and to get happy enough with our environments to allow us access at that degree of, with that degree of confidence. We're audited by all our major clients. Obviously, as you can imagine, security is paramount. And that audit process actually goes beyond some of our clients because some of our clients are licensing IP from other companies that are not necessarily in the games industry. And those companies want to make sure that their IP is protected. Scale is another factor. The larger you are, the bigger the projects you see. So a few years ago, while we were simply a collection of independent art studios, none of those art studios would have seen very large projects, let's say projects requiring 100 plus artists. Now we are one of 2, 3 players in the world that actually sees those large projects because we have 1,200 people rather than 100, 150 people in an individual business. And as you saw, the shift towards outsourcing, again, that plays to the whole ability to scale, to invest, and to attract and retain talent. And then the fourth point, which is important to stress, particularly as we get more and more into the game development side of the business and how that is able to help us in other areas of our business, not only in the art business, but actually other service lines, in creating tools and technologies that allow us to be more efficient and to produce more assets at a higher quality in a faster period of time. So if we turn to what the future of our art business looks like, we are continuing to strive to become this go-to provider. So yes, I said we are like probably number one in terms of the volume and value of work that we produce, but this is a highly fragmented industry. So we're number one in a very large market. We can't yet feel the effect of being this go-to provider as we have been able to experience in, say, our testing businesses or indeed in our localization business. So we have more to do to get to that point. Expertise, I think we're there. Trustworthiness, I think we're there. Scale, we're still lacking a little bit. I think if we had more scale, it would be more apparent. We are seen as industry innovators, and we're continuing to push the boundaries and to adopt the latest tools, techniques, technology in order to benefit our clients and to produce bigger, higher definition assets at the most economical price point. And this next point is not to be underestimated, and you'll get a sense for it as we go through some of the case studies later on today. We are in the process of pursuing a strategy of building what we hope will be the world's first global games marketing agency. And that spans a whole range of different activities. And you'll, as I said, get a glimpse of some of those activities, but there's a broader spectrum that we'll be looking to build out as well. And when we get to scale, and we've notionally said it's about $30 million or 30 million euros, we'll look at separating that out so that you as investors can start to assess the value of that particular service in isolation from the rest of the art service. So do expect further good organic growth from us in the art service line, and continue to anticipate acquisitions, particularly in the marketing services side of our business. We have a lot to do. We're trying to figure out, because we haven't sized it, by the way, that 1 billion number or whatever I put on the slide previously. That is purely for the art asset production side of the business. Marketing services we have not yet sized. We were just looking at it earlier, and there is some market data that says, the spend in marketing in video games is over $5 billion. I'm not quite sure what's included in that. To me, it sounds a little bit low for an industry that's generating revenues of 150 billion. But it's definitely a big market, and it would seem rude not to help a market of that size to do better and to help them spend some money with us. So at that point, you're probably pleased to hear, you're going to hear from one of my colleagues next. Give my voice a break. So I'm delighted to hand over right now to Jamie Campbell. Jamie runs our game development service line worldwide.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about the game development service line within Keywords. My name's Jamie Campbell, and I'm the service line director for game development. So I look after all of the game development activities within the Keywords group. I'm currently responsible for 12 studio locations globally, representing about over 900 employees. We've seen significant growth in my service line as a contributor to the overall Keywords organization. It's happened over the past 3 years and through acquisition, but also strong organic growth as well. We've got a very strong and broad mix of skills in the game development service line, and they range from providing engineering resources to clients who need extra programming bandwidth to more specialized resources for optimization, and then onto larger engagements that we'll be taking a deeper dive look at this afternoon, including porting, co-development and full game development. And some of our flagship studios from the service line are here to talk about that in more depth shortly. We've also got some really interesting ancillary services within the service line as well, such as player research, who do user experience and play testing, and also analytics. So we're really kind of an incredibly broad spectrum of services. The market, as Andrew's been saying, continues to grow, and we estimate at the moment that the market is around about the $3 billion worth in game development, but also the amount of outsourcing that's happening in game development is also growing. So we're in a very strong position, and we're seeing more and more requests for larger engagements coming from our clients. So again, that's why we're having a focus this afternoon on co-development and full game development. We're a very highly utilized service line, so we intend to scale up further as we move into the future. We need to continue to grow our existing studios, recruit new talent, retain the existing talent that we've got, and also seek out new acquisitions, and also look to spin up satellite studios for our existing studios to access new talent pools and geographies. So the state of the industry report from XDS this year stated that quality was the most important factor when developers and publishers were looking for an external development partner. And from my perspective, I don't think there are any better credentials than a glowing portfolio of aspirational titles that our studios have worked on. So we need to continue to work on the best titles that are out there. Success breeds success. We need to align ourselves with the AAA games, innovative new platforms, but also cult indie titles. Anywhere where there's quality in computer games, that's where we want to see Keywords Studios represented. Working on AAA games also helps us recruit and retain talent. We're associated with many games that are in production that people dream of working on, and we can provide an environment where engineers, designers, programmers, producers can work on a multitude of top-level titles, whereas in other places they might only get to work on a single title for 2 years. Scale within the game development service line isn't just about the breadth of our technical offering or the depth of our technical knowledge, but it's also about the size of the Keywords game development community. Scale helps us to create customized teams when we're asked by clients to support them with development of a specific genre of game. But we can also coordinate between service lines and different studios to try and improve efficiency, minimize bench, and really kind of deliver in an exemplary fashion. We undertake R&D to improve quality and efficiency of delivery at all of our development studios, but we also have a centralised effort at Electric Square in Brighton. And these guys dovetail with our Keywords Ventures initiative as well. So we're constantly on the lookout for tools and technology that can improve our clients' games and allow us to deliver more efficiently. We've got extremely agile teams, and a core competency is being able to adopt different engines, so commercial off-the-shelf engines like Unreal and Unity, but also proprietary technology from studios who have their own competitive advantage through their game engines. And around that, we've got a DevOps service within the Keywords game development service line who can help us deploy and automate the deployment of development environments across multiple sites, which is becoming more and more important as teams get bigger and more distributed. So throughout 2020 and beyond, we're going to continue organic growth at our current studio locations. We are opening satellite studios using the current Keywords infrastructure so that we can access new talent pools and new geographies, but utilising our existing studio brands. But we'll also be keeping an eye out for relevant acquisitions. We had strong organic growth in the first half of 2019 at over 32%, and we expect, that strong growth has continued through the second half of 2019. We will be taking a look in a short while at some services, including porting, co-development and full game development, and how some of our studios are also making the transition from things like core engineering to these kind of higher value multidiscipline services that Andrew was talking about earlier. It's important, though, that we keep an eye on the whole spectrum of development services that we provide and make sure that we continue to offer all of those services so that we don't miss opportunities or low friction ways to onboard new clients. Again, if we look at the 2019 State of the Industry report from XDS, stated that development capacity is one of the top 5 challenges that developers and publishers are experiencing with external partners. So in summary, we're looking at expansion to meet demand, further acquisitions in all areas of game development, and reinforcing the studios that we already have. So thank you for listening. There will be a panel with some Q&A shortly, but for the moment, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Fabio, who's the Service Line Director for Audio within Keywords.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everyone. I'm Fabio Minazzi. I'm the Director for Localization Services at Keywords Studios. I'm here to talk about the localization and audio services, which together account for almost 30% of our revenues. We've been expanding over the past 2 years as we foresaw the breadth of services that we were planning to offer. This is because our clients have also expanding needs. So if we want to be this one-stop solution, the go-to solution, we need to have more than one simple service, which would be specialistic. Therefore, we now can offer not only voiceover, but also we can do music, sound effects. We can also do music management, and we branched out, dipped our toes also into linear dubbing for the traditional linear media, which we've been pretty successful, although it's a growing activity in our organization. From the geographical point of view, I coordinate as many as 20 offices, which is a bit of a work, but it's very interesting because this network of resources allows us to serve on a local level our clients. At the same time, we create a platform where clients can engage at different levels. And they really like this because you imagine you start with a small IP and then you see your IP works and it can work in more regions. And the more it works, that you just come to us and buy more services and we deploy more resources according to different models, by the way, because some of them, they are outsourced, that you want to have like freelancers working in different time zones. Some others, instead, they asked us to concentrate the pool of resources which are really dedicated, really knowledgeable about their IPs in one single place. And we can do both of them, which is quite an amazing thing. So all in all, this allowed us to grow over the years in a pretty nice way in a market which is still very fragmented. And therefore, as it grows, we have the opportunity to grow as well inside the market. Talking about the barriers to entry, I mean, by now, there's many. I mean, it's not easy to catch up with where we are now for a number of reasons. One of them is the fact that we own a number of studios. We have very strong relationship with studios that we don't own, but we do coordinate at a daily level. And these studios are really up to standard for the gaming industry. So we've been recording their voiceover for the major IPs. Some of them we work on in development, some others we also work on in QA, FQA, player support. So we are little by little growing this platform, which makes more and more sense as our clients see it happening. And this is kind of really exciting for us because that was the very initial idea that with Andrew, we've been thinking about that from day one, or even maybe day -1 of this initiative. So, but the fact of having resources is not enough, as you understand. You also need to be able to manage those resources. So you can imagine that nowadays when you do a complex production, you need to manage the actors, the voice directors, the sound engineers, all the assets with security restrictions that are becoming more and more important for our clients, all in a seamless way, under pressure, with changes go on all the time because, creative people, they like, touching their contents at the last minute because that really makes the difference. We don't question, we execute, and we have the power to do that very, very quickly. That's why it's difficult to do what we are doing. And of course, in the meanwhile, we also learn about the contents of our clients. And this is a very big thing for our clients. It's not visible from the outside because it's knowledge. We instill knowledge about the individual intellectual properties in our teams, in our systems. So that clients come back to us and say, we would like you to take care of our next installment, next episode, because you know what we are trying to convey to our players. That's an amazing intangible asset that we have built over the years. So when we talk about localization translation, the multilingual capability there, I would say it's unmatched because we have we select people one by one through very tough tests to make sure that they are savvy on games, savvy on a specific type of games. And therefore, when we build these teams for our clients, they really are able to convey contents in for different locales in a very effective way. And that's something that, of course, builds on the credentials of 20 and more years of experience in this very field. Last point, I know that will be a Q&A session, so everyone will ask about technologies, machines, and artificial intelligence. So just to give you an idea, we took the decision after observing for a few years where the technology would go we decided not only to adopt technologies for translation, which are, let's say, mainstream in the game industry, but also to experiment on new technologies, which are not known yet how to work. But we believe we have done some experiments, may add value, may simplify the work of our translators, and retain the quality at the end. So, as you can imagine, I'll talk about this also a little bit in our strategy in the future. So, first of all, that there is a convergence happening. I mean, most of you probably have, a TV screen in their house, and more the TV screen is a smart TV. That means it's similar to a mobile phone, but with a bigger screen, which is also similar to a computer. So what happens is that little by little things get all together and become more neutral to the platform. And we are there because those global companies, I'm talking about Netflixes, the Apples, Amazons, and so on, they are technology/content company. And not by chance, we are technology/content company. So we are there with the right scale, with the right skills. So this cross-pollination will continue happening between studios with different skills. And we will, of course, work on securing more and more credibility on those platform owners. We already qualified for Netflix 3 studios in a bit more than a year. So that journey will continue. We'll continue having probably more acquisitions with people with experience in the linear media. As far as localization, text localization specifically will probably be less acquisitive and will focus more on the utilization of the latest technologies, which we now own, in the process, in the workflow, using AI for management, not only of the text of translation, but also managing the resources themselves and see where it makes sense without breaking the machine, because content are king. Remember, in our industry, content is king. People don't care how you make them, so long as you make them right. You have to be efficient in making them without breaking them. So we'll learn with our clients how to do that, and that's a journey that we are doing with some of our key clients, and we'll continue doing over the next few years. And of course, the final goal is to keep on leading market. We have a market share which is really significant. Our competitors are definitely smaller than us, and for sure, none of them have the breadth of services which we can learn from or connect to create new services. And therefore, it's becoming more and more evident to our clients that we can bring added value and help them develop to the next stage of the entertainment industry. So that's it for localization. Come over, Mathieu from KWS Services.
Hi, I'm Mathieu Lachance. I'm the service line director for testing, which encompasses functionality QA and localization QA. So what is testing? What is FQA? What is LQA? Functionality QA is essentially testing games, ensuring or trying to find out and fix any issues and errors that are present in games. Localization QA is very similar, where it's actually testing out the translation within the game, mostly making sure that it's proper and within context. We've got 11 studios globally, a bit more than 2,700 employees right now, and we are overseeing about 28%, at least for last year, of the revenue of the company. We've had an exceptional growth last year, as you can see on the nice bar graph there. And that is actually despite, surprisingly, having no acquisitions along for our service in the last year. We had a very strong organic growth, easily surpassing market growth over the last year. And we're seeing that for a few reasons. I would say on the functionality QA side, It's becoming more and more apparent that, especially since we've done the acquisition of VMC, we've become the largest, most obvious choice, essentially go-to provider for QA in North America. And obviously, and we'll see that in the next few slides, we want to repeat that success story, not only in that territory, but more and more on a global scale. Barriers to entry. In both functionality QA and localization QA, we've got our secure facilities, and that has been touched a bit by both Fabio and Andrew. We are audited, authorized by hardware manufacturers, by a lot of our clients, and then some. So we are at a scale right now in terms of secure facility that is starting to become quite hard to rival. In terms of FQA, as I mentioned, we've got an unrival scaled in North America, which is great. We're seeing essentially a snowball effect in the last 2 years. As soon as we've acquired VMC, everything just keeps coming up and piling down. And the larger we actually grow, the larger we have projects coming in, and the larger the demand actually comes in. The other big point is we've got very flexible operation on the functionality side. The testing that is done in one city or one geography is very similar to what we do in other studios. So it's become easier and easier for us to actually move work around, which then makes it easier for us to optimize volume, optimize work, and essentially improve the profitability and the usability of the work that we do. On the localization QA side, one of the biggest barriers to entry is the complexity of language, very similar to what Fabio was mentioning on localization, right? We've got a huge client coming in. They want to have a game localized in 30 languages. There's really not a lot of players that can do it all at the same point. Our clients, more and more, especially the bigger ones, they do not want to manage 10 different points of contact to get a game done. They want to talk to one person that essentially, manages all his problems in one place. And we can do that. And the last and not least point, specialism in games. There's, and you might have a question, and either for me or Fabio, well, there are bigger players in localization and translation across the world. Yes, not specialized in games. And that's the thing, right? We've got our clients, the vast majority of them, they won't trust a company that does not understand what they're doing. They need to have the context, and we have the specialists that actually have the experience. Strategy and outlook. So, as I mentioned, continue to consolidate the market leadership, especially outside North America. We're doing it more and more. We're growing, again, further strong organic growth that we have. We're growing in other markets. The plan is essentially to repeat the success story that we now have in North America and do the same in Europe, in India, in East Asia, which are, weirdly enough, the way that we actually separate the market in FQA based on workforce. On localization QA, again, continue the strong organic growth that we've had. Essentially grow what we can and even more in Ottawa, in Katowice. We're growing in our Singapore office. We're growing in our Tokyo office. So it's going well. And then for LQA, improving global resourcing flexibility through the standardization of the tools and processes. I want to bring LQA to the same level of flexibility that we have in FQA. And that increased level of flexibility was essentially make it easier for my team to manage work across multiple studios seamlessly. And that does a lot of things. Again, it by being able to have work wherever, whenever, it reduces time, it's better usage, it optimizes resources and volume, and essentially increases the quality, the uptime, the profitability, and even the revenue. And that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to leave you with Fred. Thank you. I'm going to leave you with Frédéric, my colleague from Player Support.
Frederic Arends, leading player support for keywords globally. So what is player support? You probably have contacted your bank, your phone carrier, internet provider with questions. As you can imagine, it was different questions, and it's not the same way to resolve them. With game comes different set of questions. Our role is to be the link, the bridge between the game developer and the audience. Questions can be about lost currency, stuck characters, incompatibility of a device, something more technical, and something like real-life threat about cyberbullying. So it's a very wide range of interaction. And this is what defines player support to me. It's being the interaction between the brand, the game developer, publisher, and their community. Being on a ticket, on a phone call, on social media, so many social media. So this is what we are doing. And of course, multilingual. Why do we do player support? It's a good question. Before it was kind of a mandatory task, like we have to. Now there are real consequences to not be answering your customers. Like it's a bad review and it costs a lot of money. So now there is a real value to support your customers, support your players, support your games. At Keywords, the player support journey started in 2015 with the acquisition of Alchemic Dream, which I'm from. And then you can see a rapid growth because we have been able to establish, invade 11 of the studios. And it's kind of convenient, as Matt has been saying, it's very secured. So it has a lot of perks. I will come back to that later. In 2019, we wanted to consolidate because we realized that doing something for 200 people, which was the size of Alchemic Dream, and doing that for 1,300 is not the same thing. So we really care about the quality and the dedication we have to our projects. And we said, okay, let's consolidate. Let's see how we can scale. Let's see how we can grow. So we prepared ourselves for the next organic growth. Because we are in a very nice industry. The market is big, 1.2 billion just for gaming support. The customer support is even bigger. And the interesting thing is the nature of game that changed. Before it was buying a box. So you could not fix it. It was a box, it was a CD, that's it. Now it's game as a service, as people like to say. It's online games. And with online games come a lot of interaction, a lot of monetization. And unfortunately, it increases the chances that something doesn't go right. So it increases the volume of support. So as we progress, not only the gaming market is increasing, but the need for support is. The technology is helping in the back end, and we will talk about that. Barrier to entry, a lot of things have been said about the strength of keywords, establishing this barrier to entry. And I realized that I don't like what I did, and I should have really concentrated on expertise, security, and capacity. Expertise, because as I said before, customer support was, I have to do it. Now it's like, I really need someone who knows what they talk about. Again, like bank support, game support, very different. So our clients like that we are complete. We have a gaming DNA, and this is what is defining us. Our staff are gamers. They join us because they like games. They want to serve this industry, not because they like to do customer support, but because they want to do that within games. So the expertise is very important, and it's required. And credential is the best, because a lot of our clients are coming because they've been referred to us, because they see what we can do, and that we put a lot of heart into the supporting a community. So that's the expertise side. At the same time, the language is important. We are a localization company, localization QA. We developed a very good strong at recruiting talents that are not only being native of a country, but master the language. So it is something that is insanely difficult. And We have seen the studios we have. We have a very good reach now for player support, 11 studios, west to east. It's allowing us to have both the cultural diversity and the language proficiency to support the communities that our clients have. So that's the expertise part. Security, as we said, Keyword is rich of very secured facilities. So for me, it's very easy to invade these places and develop our service within. So that's something that the clients are more and more aware of. Privacy and security are becoming top concerns. So you really want to be sure that when you share personal information with your support provider, it will be safe. At the same time, the security is, again, the fact that we know what we are doing. Customer support is live. Like, we are not preparing something and delivering it. Like, when we start, we are live in social media. A tiny mistake is seen. So they want to be sure that when they give us their community, we will take good care of them. So for me, that's part of the security as well. And capacity, because you have seen games generating a lot of money in no time, and they want to be sure that we can follow. Hence why we have been consolidating, because we need to be able to start with 300 people in no time in various languages. So the capacity is requested because, as Matt said, a client doesn't want to have 2, 3, 4 vendors. If possible, do everything from west to east. The huge English language, as well as everything that can come. So for me, that's really the 3 pillars that are very critical and what makes us now like the go-to provider. So what's next? We want to really capitalize on what we have built, like being the gaming-specific provider. And sometimes we have to explain clients what it is. Like we talk about customer satisfaction, we look at reviews, KPIs, but more than that, what is the value of a good support? Last week we had this case where we had to explain to a client that they were using another vendor. Satisfaction with what we're doing looked the same, but the other vendor was reimbursing players, over-reimbursing players, like 60% of the requests. Reimbursing an item, it doesn't look expensive. It's digital, you can produce a lot, but it's a lack of revenue. And on our side, we were only reimbursing for 20% of the cases. So more than the satisfaction, more than the headcount, we were able to prove that we were allowing our clients to earn more while maintaining the satisfaction of the community, which is the most important. So we want to really explain our clients how everything we are the best at can be turned into loyalty, into revenues, into growth. At the same time, I talked about social media, and we spent our 2019 to really build up our social media capacity. It's something we have done from the early age with game mastering, but now it took different names and different channels. But now we have really specialists that helps our client to maintaining their various channels and interact with their communities, make sure that it's a safe environment, that like we take care of the message that we are communicating. And with the mobile support, we have different tier of players. Like you have the people downloading for free, playing 10 minutes and deleting the app. And you have the people that are spending hours per day, spending thousands of dollars per day in a game. How do you increase the loyalty of these people? What are you doing to make sure that they are taken care of? So more and more clients, it's no more a transactional relationship. They're not asking us for an head count. They're asking us for advices about how to drive a community, how to support it. Which tool should they use? How should we answer? What languages should we focus? And all this expertise we built, we accumulated, we are now able to share with our clients. I don't like to say consultant or stuff like that. It's more like we build a project together about how to support a community, because our goal is for the community to be happy, enjoy the game, and make the developer successful, because they last longer this way. And of course, it's growing, and we cannot keep up with just human time. If I take the example of the moderation, because that's another aspect of customer support, we have to moderate user-generated content, being on forums, social media, even in-game. It cannot be done only with humans. Like, imagine everything that is created on social media. Nobody can keep up with that in a timely manner. So that's where technology is showing up. And I don't like to talk about AI yet. It's still learning. But automation is a great term to talk about how it can help customer support. Machines are best at script. We are better at creativity and empathy. So we are working with the technology to save cost where it's better to save cost. Where can we put automation? Where can we use different tools to interact differently? And with Fabio and the localization department, we were very interested by this machine learning, machine translation that is Canton. How can we harness this power to enhance our service? I still rely on the talent that is our team, and they allow to deliver a VIP service. But we know that for the notion of scale, technology is something that we need to continue investing in, and we are already teaching the machine. Like in all the cases that automation is there, it's because we are teaching the machine what to do, how to do it right. So you're not speaking to a chatbot that is just making you unhappy, like to stay polite. You want something that is really useful. So we are sharing all these advices with our client on when to use technology and when to rely on the quality of human. So this is our journey. Thank you. And now I think it's the Q&A.
Correct.
So does anybody have any questions for any of our speakers, or indeed for myself for that matter?
Bernie Arkham from UBS O'Connor. I have a question for player support, please. So you showed on the chart, and you talked about consolidation 2019, but that flat growth seems to me, presumably a very big gap to what must be a very strong underlying market growth. So could you just give us a bit more detail in terms of what exactly did consolidating entail, and some reasons why we can be confident about growth acceleration from here?
No, thank you. So basically, and I think Jamie that said that, or Andrew, sorry, like the bigger we are, the bigger the project. And when you start a project of 20 people and one of 100, I mean, it's 5 times. It's easy to say, but it's a lot of managers and supervision. And I used to say that I'm not a call center, meaning that we have an excellent attrition, but it means that we rely on the talent of people to train our guys to deliver a different kind of service, meaning that at some point we realized that, I mean, basically I needed more managers, talented ones, to be able to keep up with the service. And we did not feel ready to take project and just assign new people without training. So we had to slow down for this reason. And as well, we developed, 11 locations. Mexico is very new, 2019. So we had to make sure that we are ready to deliver the service in these various locations before being able to speed up. In Manila, for instance, we switched location from one office to another to be able to double our capacity. So all these things took time in 2019.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what it means to grow at kind of whatever it was, 300% that they grew at the previous year. I mean, the Philippines, Manila, which has become the biggest single center for Fred's operations, we started that with a spin-out from one of our clients about 3 years ago. 27 people, he turned that into 700 people in the Philippines at some stage. You've got to sort of slow down, invest in a single facility with all the right security and fit out to appropriate for a company of our standard. Move people in there, and then look for your next phase of growth. So, other questions, please? Yes, Will.
Will Wallace from Numis. I've got a question on scale. Firstly, in game development, how big do you think projects could become if in a blue sky scenario, if you were doing everything for a AAA game or something like that? And then I've got a second question.
Yeah, so I mean, that's like answering the question: how big is a game? We see AAA games with development budgets of over 100 million for a single title. There are studios, independent studios, that will take on a single IP and work on that one IP for maybe 3 years. That may well be a $100 million development project. We're not there yet. We're not at that sort of scale. We're probably working on projects which over multiple years might come to about $40 million or thereabouts, right, Jamie? So at some point in Keywords, we might get comfortable with having, taking on an entire $100 million kind of development project. But for now, we'd rather spread our bets a little bit beyond, across multiple titles and perhaps smaller engagements. Am I?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're at a stage, certainly from a full game development point of view, we're in a fairly early stage in the kind of the life cycle. If you compare how far art has progressed over the past 10 years. So art started out being very, very transactional, and you're hearing now about how integrated that solution is. People are very, very protective about their IP. It takes years to build up a fully kind of trusted relationship. We've got some guys who are going to be talking about that this afternoon a little bit. So it's one step at a time. We've got the added complexity as well of constant technological change that our clients are dealing with as well. So as we prove our value over time and continue to deliver for people, we expect these engagements to get bigger and bigger over time.
I had a similar question on localization and audio. How much of the time are you working on the whole global solution for a game, and how much of it are you doing really just only a bit of that alongside lots of other providers?
Oh, it's the full spectrum. It's really, I don't think I can give you the percentage breakdown. We have quite a few clients for whom we do all languages, all audio on single game, on a sort of evergreen basis where we're continuously working on those titles. For a lot of the AAA games, they're still working a little bit on the kind of older model where they'll have a number of different vendors providing different language mixes for translation and audio across a single title. But we, generally speaking, increasingly being asked to package more and more languages together.
Yeah, I mean the way our clients are operating on localization is very different. We've got more than 300 clients, and I couldn't name two of them that work the same way. You have different geography spread where they are, where they sell. They've got different type of games, size, genre. They've got different development cycles as well. Therefore, they have their different needs. When we talk about the translation and audio side, what we are seeing more and more is that we are assigned to do the audio of the games that we do translation for, which is a first part of consolidation process on their side, simplifies the pipeline, the production pipeline. But also we are working more and more with our colleagues, because we see that there are, for example, areas where we translate, but then the player support, the people catch, things that are being said in the game, which would make sense that we have a shared knowledge, but our clients still see them as two completely separate pillars. So I can say that right now is not a huge interaction between these different services, but there is the direction that every year we see more consistent, larger engagement in terms of services.
Bridie from Stifel. I suppose I was just wondering, given how quickly you've grown through acquisition, and it seems that on the whole you tend to keep the underlying studio brands of anything that you acquire, do your customers actually understand the scale of the group today, or do they still think of it as a sort of a collection of smaller studios? Do you think that you're yet actually seeing the benefit of the scale that you're talking about today?
I think it depends. Some of our clients interact with us as the Keywords Group, and they very much see the scale of the Keywords Group and understand the way in which we work together across studios. But one of the reasons why we retain the brands, at least for a period of time, is that there are plenty of clients out there that have a very strong association directly with that particular brand, and we don't necessarily want to cut that association. So we're very much an organization that tries to what's the right word? Tries to sort of mesh around our clients and how they want to interact with us. But what we do find over time, and we see this very strongly in art, we've certainly seen it in the testing businesses, is that over time, maintaining those distinct brands sometimes becomes obvious not to do that because the clients don't value the separate nature of the individual brands. They want to interact with the service on a more global scale. It is going to depend a little bit, I think, service line by service line, how that develops. So for something like localization and testing, those brands have largely fallen away in terms of the engagement with clients and how the clients see us. But I should imagine that in something like marketing and potentially in game development, so on, those brands endure for a bit longer. But we do what makes sense. So nobody at Keywords is forcing a change in brand. It normally becomes very obvious from the way in which clients are interacting and in the way in which our studios themselves want to be seen and branded.
Hi, Chirag Bhadia from HSBC. Just one on game development. Could you give some more details on the proprietary software solutions and the behavioral research consulting side that you've put in?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got player research offices in Brighton and Montreal. And the work that goes on there is a consultation process where at basically any stage of the game development cycle, the researchers there can analyse the game. So they can do market analysis, they can measure what attraction that particular game is going to have. Are you going to hit your target market? But then either on paper prototypes, they can investigate how well the gameplay will work, whether it's frustrating for players to engage with. They can take playable prototypes, do the same studies, and they can even take post-release games and run user play testing there as well. So they have fully equipped lab facilities where they can monitor where people struggle with games, where they enjoy them, do they have problems with the interfaces and things like that. And it's got a huge amount of value to the game developers and publishers to understand the audience, figure out the frustrations, and fix them hopefully before they even reach the market.
Richard Williamson from Edison. I was just interested with the conversation about moving into more linear media, particularly from the audio side, I suppose. But also, you threw the question to the audience to talk about, to ask about AI and deep and sort of, some of the technology solutions. To what degree, when is the equation for linear media similar to the non-linear games media, or are you sort of having to crack a completely new nut there? And then how does technology, or how is technology going to help you in that process?
I think I'll take that question if I might. So if you look at linear media and what they call subtitling and dubbing, and you look at games and what we call localization and audio, they're very similar in discipline. On the one hand, you're translating entertainment content, and on the other hand, you're doing having actors come into studios, record voice to do the voiced part of the experience. Either the Italian voice for the actor that's in the movie, or indeed with a game, it's the Italian voice that's associated with the character in a game. But that's where the similarity stops. Games are far more complex than movies. Movies are predefined. When a movie goes into localization or to audio, it's totally linear. You know the script, you know the character progression from start to finish over a 2-hour period, or 3 hours if you happen to have seen a very famous movie recently. Whereas a game is completely non-linear. Your ability to understand the story in the first place is really quite hard, because basically the story is being driven by the interactions that are happening with the player and the non-playable characters. When you look at the script, the script that you're actually translating is littered with placeholders, computer code placeholders that are acting on the content, the textual content, and indeed on the verbal content within the game. So it's very, very much more complicated process and a larger process. Add to that the fact that in video games, we have since day dot lived with a process of simultaneous release into multiple languages. Whereas in linear media, be that for television or film, they've always followed a waterfall model. So first you produce the film in Hollywood, then you get a release date in France, and after the English version has been done, you're probably dubbing the French version. At some point, you'll separately be dubbing the German version and so on. So what's happening now is you've got people like Netflix and Amazon and so on that have come into the market, and they're wanting to release their content simultaneously. The vendor structure in that market has been sort of struggling to adapt to that new way of working, whereas that's the way we've always worked. We know no other way of doing it. So of course, there's a certain attraction for these companies in trying to engage with keywords. Problem is, of course, we're busy doing lots of other things as well. So there's only so much of that sort of work we can take on. But we're increasingly becoming successful, and I think demonstrating our value in that space. I think we will move on to the next session. So thanks very much, guys. Actually, Jamie, you're up next, I believe. So I will hand back to you to talk about game development.
Yes, we've got some pretty interesting stuff I hope you find coming up. I just want to provide some context because you've heard me use phrases like co-development, full game development and porting earlier on in the slides. And I wanted to try and illustrate where these sit in the game development landscape within the game development service line. So on the top right there, we've got these blocks that represent development activities that our studios undertake. In general, as we go from left to right along that chart, the engagements get larger and get a more wide skills and discipline mix involved. Sometimes our studios, well, pretty much all of our studios undertake more than one of these activities as their core competencies, and that can really help them maximize utilization if they've got different size engagements going on at the same time. They can manage resources effectively. Now, often an initial engagement will take place on the left-hand side of that chart with a new client. They might have a project that desperately needs resources and they need bandwidth and engineers. Our studios can help them out with that. We can then demonstrate value, establish trusts and build a relationship and start to promote that client along this value chain to larger engagements and more complex engagements. But similar to using that model for client promotion, we can also use that for studio development. Studios who maybe come on board with keywords who have a very core engineering focus, given access to the right talent, right support from keywords and the right opportunities for projects, they can develop into more sophisticated studios who are able to offer services that involve more of a discipline mix, including producers, designers and artists. And some of my colleagues who'll be talking in a few minutes will outline how that works. But at Keywords, we can manage that transition of studios and the evolution of studios because we don't have to staff with unnecessary headcount as a studio evolves. We can use other service lines, other studios, and really keep control of resources and maximize efficiency. But when studios become co-development or full game development capable, they provide a unique gateway where clients can access the whole breadth of Keywords services to be able to deliver value to every stage of the game development cycle in each type of game development activity, whether that be art, engineering, localization, audio, all of the things that you've heard about today. But we have to manage that evolution of our studios as well. We don't want to homogenize all of the studios and have them all offering the same thing. There's still very high value in engineering resources and optimization specialists, and maintaining that full spectrum offering is a real USP for us. So we've got 4 presentations coming up, starting with me, which is a fairly short presentation, and then we're going to hear 2 co-development engagements and about a full client development from my colleagues. So I'm going to talk about porting. Porting is the term used, and I better get this right, I guess, when a video game designed to run on one platform, be it an arcade cabinet, a console, or a PC, is converted to run on a different platform. But there's a whole spectrum of porting activities. A client might be developing a game on a current commercial engine, and they're developing on the PC and the Xbox, but they need additional resources to support other platforms like Switch or PlayStation 4 with the technical requirements, optimizations, and UI changes that are needed. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got 20-year-old games that have got a very old code base, but that people want to play a game, but they need an awful lot of re-engineering work to get them to work on current platforms. And it's the latter that I'm going to be talking about now. The studio that undertook this project is D3T. It's a UK-based studio up in Cheshire, and joined the Keywords family in 2017 with 45 staff. It's since nearly doubled in size. Very strong technical bias, but growing a creative team over time. So moving along that spectrum of offerings that we showed before. Shenmue 1 was a life simulator role-playing game that was released on the Dreamcast in 1999, and at the time, it was the most expensive video game ever made, with a development and marketing budget of $47 to $70 million estimated. Shenmue 2 was released in 2001 on Dreamcast and Xbox. Nearly 20 years later, D3T was commissioned to bring these titles back to life on current generation consoles. So the aim of a technical port is to be as faithful to the original game as possible, especially because games like these have got real cult followings, very hardcore fans. And one thing about 20-year-old games is people tend to have quite a rose-tinted view of them. At the time, standard definition CRT TVs were quite forgiving on standard definition graphics. Playing those games on a HD TV now, they're far less forgiving of the screens. So we wanted to allow the original game to be played exactly how it was 20 years ago, but in a high-resolution, widescreen format. So I'm just going to provide a few examples of why it's technically difficult and where the time and the effort goes in order to actually create something that looks like people remember it looked 20 years ago. It's not as easy as it sounds. There were a lot of technical challenges along the way. It was a huge forensic task to unpick a 20-year-old code base and examine the source code and all of the assets that came with it. These were huge open-world games with thousands of assets and pieces of geometry, sometimes parts of the world that it wasn't immediately obvious even existed. So we had to use lots of QA testers to fully play through the game and map out where all the content of the world would be. And porting legacy titles to modern consoles often involves a change of architecture. So you have to port the entire code base from 32-bit to 64-bit. And that's where working with a studio who's got previous experience of this type of work really pays dividends. D3T in particular has got proven strategies for this type of work. They know the pitfalls to avoid. They know the types of bugs to expect and how to minimize them. And this game was actually shipped on a proprietary D3T game engine as well that was built in order to quickly port this and efficiently to new consoles. A lot of the comments in the source code were in Japanese, and in Shenmue 1, even the scripts that drove the game logic were in Japanese language with Japanese function names, Japanese variables, so it was quite a challenge for a Western studio. The Dreamcast also had some pretty advanced technology for its time. It had custom hardware to support graphics and audio functions, and we didn't have the original source code for the libraries that ran those devices. So our engineers had to create software versions of these hardware devices and tweak them and play with them and use almost empirical method to try and simulate the output from the original game. And this was fundamental because it affected the way that shadows and lighting looked in the game. And especially if there's any Dreamcast fans out there, there was a feature of the Dreamcast called order-independent alpha sorting, which resulted in a few late nights for some of our guys, but they do like a challenge. Some of the problems were impossible to overcome. When we first switched to widescreen format, there was a cutscene in which Ryo's hands, the lead character, came in from the side of the screen, and when we opened the field of view, it became apparent that these were disembodied hands with no wrists or upper arms. The game had been optimized so much that specific hands were made for specific scenes, and without reauthoring thousands of assets, we had to put some decorative black bars at the side of the screen and switch back to good old 4:3 for some cutscenes. But that was just a very kind of quick glimpse into some of the technical difficulties and challenges that this type of release project can present. But Shenmue 1 and 2 are pretty extreme examples, but our team does love a technical challenge. The results were 2 20-year-old games brought to life on 3 current generation platforms, and the Metacritic user scores that we got confirmed to the team that they had done a successful and faithful job of recreating the games. Now, the technical challenges of these types of projects have got a cumulative effect. They do upskill the team. So although every job is different, technical problem solving does improve within the team, and they get better and better and more efficient. And of course, there's lots of legacy games out there that can benefit from this type of treatment. It's also very, very relevant to the time period where we are now, where a new console life cycle is about to start, and there'll be lots of content that publishers are wanting to bring to the new consoles. So more experience of a broader discipline team involving embedded QA, art, production, designers and things allows D3T to kind of take one step further along the value chain as well, starting to offer more co-development services and potentially full game development. And although the deep technical roots of D3T still will mean that they offer core engineering services into the future, I'm sure they're going to be a very rounded studio profile that's able to take on larger and longer term engagements. So immediately following a quick video that I'm about to show, we'll be hearing Alan from Spirasoft talk about a co-development engagement from Spirasoft in Russia and St. Petersburg. Just before that, we'll take a quick look at a short video and hopefully see the original beauty of Shenmue from 20 years ago, but in high resolution on current consoles.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Van Slyke. I'm in charge of production at Spirasoft. And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about a co-development effort we had with our longtime partner Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed Origins. A little bit about the company. We joined the Keywords family in 2017. We have multiple development studios, and we're approaching 600 people, but most of our development efforts are centered in St. Petersburg, Russia. As Jamie mentioned, we're in the game development service line. We have of those 600 people, those are multidisciplinary, so it's art, engineering, QA, and we're capable of delivering many types of engagements, but we're probably best known for our AAA work in mobile and on platform games with some of the top publishers like you see here. And these are truly partnerships for us. These are long-term partnerships, sometimes since company inception 15 years ago, that tend to give us recurring work and grow the opportunities over time. And of course, working with some of these top publishers gives us opportunity to work with many of the top franchises. These are all billion-dollar franchises. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, kind of size begets size, but also working on franchises like this is also a huge carrot and what allows us to attract and retain the best talent and deliver AAA quality work. So these are all, at any given time, we have 20 plus engagements happening of different size. And so this is a small snapshot of either current or recent engagements that have had team sizes from 20 to 120 people plus. But today we're going to select one of those engagements to dig into more deeply, Assassin's Creed Origins. Two pieces of context that I think will help before we dig in. The first about the franchise itself, if you're unfamiliar with Assassin's Creed, a huge franchise that spans many different media types, games, books, comics, movies. And historically, it's based upon kind of like realism, open world action adventure, and it always has an actual historical setting. So in this case, we're talking about Assassin's Creed Origins, which took place in ancient Egypt. And about the co-development, Jamie mentioned earlier, what is co-development? I'll expand upon it a little bit, and John and Shu, as they talk about their case studies, might add to this definition. But co-development is really taking a feature, carving out a feature, multiple features, or even an entire game, and being creatively, ownership over it, but also having a multidisciplinary team that'll build everything and contribute everything from kind of design and prototyping fully through implementation and bug fix and support. And these are teams that are embedding into the primary development teams fully. So same source, repository, same bug repository, same project methodology, et cetera. Okay, so with that in mind, we will take a look at a trailer that shows some of the goodness that we delivered. So that within Assassin's Creed Origin, this open world action adventure game that took place in ancient Egypt, the features that we carved out from Spherosoft was wildlife. So everything that you see in Assassin's Creed Origins with regards to wildlife was delivered by Spherosoft. So we'll take a look at the trailer and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So in addition to all of the animals that we delivered, which I think was 30 plus animals, and again, the idea here is we're delivering everything that's required to make the game come to life in this open world action adventure. So of the 30 plus animals, each has multiple kind of core deliveries or functionality. The first is that they have to have a fight system. So fighting animal versus player, animal versus NPC. And that means all the damage, the health indicators, the animations, everything that's required to make the fight systems feel compelling. The second is navigation. And so across air, sea, and land, the animals all need the navigation, the traversal, the AI to be able to, the crocodile who's in the water needs to be able to leap from the water and snatch the gazelle that's on land. And so the animals have to have fully aware navigation systems. And lastly, the complex behaviors that you're seeing. So predator, prey, attack, flee, herding, grazing, all of the rich behaviors that you see, again, like those are critical components for every animal to have. And again, is a big part of what makes the player feel like they're immersed. So let's take a look at the rest of the trailer and enjoy. This is also, as you can imagine, a title like this, carving out wildlife as an open world component. It takes a village, back to Andrew. It takes a village to build a title like this. And this is the architecture, kind of like geographically, of what the effort that it took to build a title like this. So Ubisoft Montreal as the lead studio, and 6 internal Ubisoft studios geographically across the world, with Spherosoft as the only external development partner on this engagement. And so again, we're integrated fully into their tool set, their pipeline. We're checking into the same source repository. We are essentially an extension of the Ubisoft Montreal headquarters development effort. And regarding opportunities for growth and kind of, Jamie mentioned it earlier, but finding surprises and finding opportunities for growth within a game, even in the middle of the development cycle, as we took the wildlife mandate and as that trust equity was built with Ubisoft about delivery and quality of deliveries, the scope grew and the team size grew. And they offered for us to additionally expand the team and take an additional component, these epic battles, these war elephants. So the war elephant is something that we initially proposed. We prototyped, designed, and ultimately ended up delivering 4 of these into the shipped product. And these are really epic moments that if you're playing the game, this is the water cooler moment that when you're fighting one of these epic war elephants, that's what you're talking to with your colleagues or your friends the day after at the office. And regarding other opportunities, we see many. Serialized engagements, I think this is what Andrew referred to as evergreen work, very similar to that. But as you can imagine, these are 12, 18, 24-month engagements when you're working on AAA development. And there's a mutual investment. Our team is flying to Montreal. Montreal team is flying to us. We're sending people around the world. And we're learning the franchise sensibilities, the design sensibilities. There's complete transparency on the teams on both sides. So everybody makes professional relationships on both sides. And so once you have this investment and the engagement and you're delivering at AAA quality, then it opens the door for serialized engagements and additional work. And so this team that you just saw that worked on and delivered Assassin's Creed Origins went on to work on Assassin's Creed Odyssey and ship that and continues to be engaged with Ubisoft to this day and increased team size and increased responsibilities. The second is that there's not only a primary development cycle, but there's traditionally a very long tail as well. So we'll sign up usually initially for the primary development engagement. And then, but as the game is approaching release, the games as a service, live operations, downloadable content, there's that, again, with that same reduced or eliminated barrier to entry, we can work with the partner to roll the team onto additional content engagements after the primary game is actually shipped and bridge to the next project. And Day Zero studio strategies is something that we're observing that's a more recent opportunity. But what we're seeing is that, as these AAA games require 300, 400, 500 people or beyond to build, we're seeing top publishers that are opening studios intentionally being lean operationally internally and minimizing their kind of like core domain experts, but seeking at day zero to engage with external co-developers as part of their strategy. So if you can imagine, the studio has 3, 5, 10 people, and they're already reaching out to secure perhaps 100 people on our side, which not only saves them money internally, but also bootstraps and accelerates that effort from the day zero time where they open to the studio to the time that they can actually be delivering and prototyping and delivering product, because we can insert and give them 20, 50, 70 people and actually be part of their primary development strategy from day zero. And finally, with our joining the Keywords family in 2017, prior to this date, as part of our kind of like business development strategy and working with potential partners, we always had to kind of expose that we had, although we're very full service, right? We do our engineering, front end, back end, but we've never done audio at Sparrowsoft, and we don't do cinematics. There's a few areas that it's just not in our wheelhouse to do, and those were always things that we would expose to the partners. And now the tables have turned, and those have become opportunities. So we're seeing increased amount of work coming in because we can say, not only do we do AAA work in all of these domains and we can do all these things for you, and in addition, our Keywords sister studios can handle these other things, and we can be a one-stop, the go-to shop that allows you to succeed completely on your product. So lots of opportunities. We see continued growth and exciting stuff to work on. So thanks very much. Next is Shu from Studio Gobo.
Good afternoon. My name is Shu. I'm the game director from Studio Gobo. Studio Gobo is a co-development studio. We are located in Brighton. We joined Keywords in 2018 and currently have over 100 people working on multiple projects. It is my pleasure today to share with you some of our work on Synced of Planet. It is a project that we are collaborating with Tencent's in-house dev studio in Shanghai. First, to kick things off, I have a very short video showing some of the early progress of the project. Let's take a look. Yeah, the world in Synced is set in 5 to 10 years time in future, and the world is in crisis and is infected by millions of AI cyborgs. And it is a competitive multiplayer game where over about 50 players compete against each other, as well as those AI cyborgs. The goal of the game is to escape planet Earth in a space shuttle with your teammates. I think a simpler explanation of the gameplay would be to think Fortnite or Apex Legends, but now add hundreds of robots in it. But I think more seriously, the key differentiator for this product is, on top of all those exciting gameplay, it also has a very engaging story and narrative. Between rounds of exciting matches, you as a player return to this crashed spaceship, a shelter called Haven, where you will meet other characters and you will uncover the histories and conspiracies leading up to this huge crisis. And it is this continuous and ambitious narrative development that is really sets this game apart. That is not something that is seen in other products of the same genre. And Studio Global's main responsibility is actually Haven, and your homestead, where the characters and the story are developed, where player progression and monetization take place. And as Alan mentioned, code development is cross-disciplinary, is creatively led, and we are responsible for the concept, layout, character animations, AIs, visual effects, as well as many other features for this project. And we have a team of designers, artists, programmers, visual effects specialists, animators, dev testers, all working together on this project. So really excited, covering the whole full development cycle on this product. And similar to the War Elephant story, that shortly after we started on this project, we have already managed to expand our scope. And now we are taking on a new game mode, which accounts for about a third of the game content. At this stage, I can't review any of the details of that game mode, but it just is a good example to show, very often after we started on a project and win the trust from the clients, we're able to quickly expand our collaboration to take on more work. We're very excited about this opportunity, and not just because of its high ambition and standards, but this is also our first collaboration with a Chinese developer. And more often that I feel we're not just recognized for our capability, our reliability, our capacity to complement elite dev studios, as highlighted in Clark's quote there, the creative director from on this project. I think I feel more and more often that we are recognized for our expertise and our experience in what we do. And I think it is our specialist knowledge in the character action genre that initiated this collaboration. Another story is worth mentioning is shortly after we started on this project, we noticed the game's visual design as well as user interface can be improved. And we thought this could be a great match between Tencent and SPOF. SPOF is our world-class design agency within the Keywords Group. They have worked on many well-known franchises, such as Call of Duty. So we made the introduction, and very quickly, as always, SPOF quickly impressed Tencent and have started working on a separate engagement from Global's work and to work on new user interface design for them. And Synced Off Planet currently is in production, but after its release, it will be operated as a live service. So we very much see, as with our other projects, this grows into a long-term partnership. And we hope this will bring more opportunities for us to work with many other talented Keywords studios. I'm now going to hand over to John, our studio head of Electric Square, to share his stories of For the Street.
Thank you, Shu. So firstly, I should point out that Studio Gobo are based in Hove, actually, and not Brighton. Whereas Electric Square are based in Brighton. So I'm the studio head of, or the head of studios for Electric Square. And I'm here to talk about our experience working with Microsoft's Turn 10 Studio on the Forza Street franchise. So Electric Square was founded in 2015. We originally set up as the sister studio to Studio Gobo. And our initial remit was to focus on mobile and free-to-play. We have 3 studios at the moment. Brighton, which is the first studio, our HQ. In November last year, we set up a studio in Leamington Spa. And more recently, in fact, it was announced today in the press, we've set up a studio in Singapore. Now, the reason why we've picked Leamington Spa and Singapore are really because they are amazing talent bases for, for top game development talent. So that was our driving factor in picking those locations. We're currently at 150 staff across the 3 studios, and we're targeting 200 by the end of 2020, which we feel is very realistic. We focus on full game development. We've done some co-devs. There's a couple of co-devs we've done in the last 5 years. But really, we're equipped to do full kind of end-to-end game development. And we have very specific expertise in racing. Lots of us are from a racing game background. We're mobile experienced, and we've got lots of experience in free-to-play games and live operations. We've had the pleasure over the last few years of working with some great partners, including Microsoft, Mattel, and Amazon. So Forza Street is it's a free-to-play casual game based around a fictional street racing event set in Miami. It was commissioned by Microsoft Turn 10 Studios back in 2016. They approached us and said they wanted to take Forza, which is one of their top IPs, which at that time only existed on Xbox consoles. They wanted us to help them take it to a wider audience. So people who perhaps liked cars but wouldn't necessarily go out and buy an Xbox and play a simulation racing game. So the game is very much designed for a different audience than the console products. It is a casual game. It's already out on Windows 10. We launched that product last April, and we're currently working on mobile versions, which will follow soon. And the full client development has been done by Electric Square. What I mean by client development is we've produced all of the player-facing content, but Microsoft are taking care of back-end services as well as marketing and user acquisition. So now we're going to watch a trailer. Thank you. So why did Microsoft Turn 10 come to us? We were a new studio at the time. We'd only sort of been in existence for a few months at that point. But really, it was because of our rich racing game heritage. So most of the original seed team for Electric Square worked at a number of companies in Brighton, Climax Racing and Blackwatch Studios. And those were racing specialist studios. So a lot of us have over 20 years experience making racing games. A bunch of us also had some pretty relevant experience making mobile and free-to-play games. Key members of the senior team worked on titles such as Angry Birds Go and CSR Racing. Now, those are two of the most commercially successful racing mobile games ever made. So that was also very relevant to Microsoft and Turn 10. And they initially engaged in a prototype phase. So we had 3 months to kind of prove the core concept out. And that involved a bit of sort of metagame, the stuff that happens outside of the game, but mostly what the kind of racing experience was. We hit all the right marks with that prototype, so that rolled into a full contract. So we took care of the full client development, as I mentioned earlier. So that was everything really from a concept stage right the way through to launching the game on Windows 10 last April. Since then, we've been in what we call a live ops phase. At Electric Square, we take pretty much, we've pretty much got every aspect covered. So we have artists, designers, programmers, producers, QA, audio, analytics, and in the last sort of 6 months, we've developed a community management department as well. And since launching on Win 10, the team they've been developing the mobile versions, but they've also been looking at data from the live version. They've been translating that to kind of design changes to target specific KPIs relating to the product's performance, mainly sort of surrounding, retention, retaining users, as well as monetization. We've had plenty of time to develop a really strong relationship with Microsoft. So it's we're running into our 4th year now. And we've got a very close relationship with the Turn 10 Forza Street team, the Forza Street leadership team. So as well as having weekly one-to-ones on an individual level with our counterparts within Turn 10, we also have weekly team meetings over Skype. So, we all sit in a room and, their leadership team sits in a room and we discuss the major issues on the project. And every 6 weeks, to coincide with our milestones and our milestone planning, the leadership team from Seattle come and visit our studio in Brighton, and we sit down and we collaboratively plan the next phase of development. When you're, particularly when you're in live ops, it's important to, to be able to kind of plan together and also change plans depending on how users are engaging with your product. So we do that collaboratively, and that system's been working really well. We've also been collaborating with some internal studios within Keywords. I think initially it's worth calling out Studio Gobo. So when we started Electric Square, we were a small company. We didn't have enough people at that point to complete this project. So we borrowed some people from Studio Gobo, many of whom stayed at Electric Square and are now fully fledged electrons. But really, we couldn't have done that project without the support of Studio Gobo and without those guys coming and sort of helping us kickstart everything. We've also had testing support from the QA service line, and environment art has been supplied and supported by Mindwalk. So those collaborations really came about after we became part of Keywords. And it was very easy when Microsoft came to us and said, can you sort of help out in these areas, to actually, kind of ring our colleagues and say, can we spin something up? Can you help out on this project? So that was one of the many benefits of being part of Keywords. So now I'm handing back to you, Andrew. Is that right?
I think we're going to do a QA.
Okay.
Q&A. So,
thank you.
Hi, Dan Risdale from Edison. A few years ago, you sort of mooted the opportunity of potentially taking a big outsourcing deal, taking a team perhaps out of a large developer and winning the outsource business that way. Is that kind of deal still on the table, or are you winning that business organically and through your current business development initiatives?
yeah, I wish you hadn't reminded me of that, but yes. I still believe that at some point, some of the activities that are done internally at the client will be externalized. Maybe it's because the reason it hasn't happened as much. I think we've done 2 of those sort of spin-out engagements with clients so far. But I think one of the reasons why it hasn't happened more is perhaps because we haven't had the scale, or we haven't been seen to be this go-to provider. I think increasingly, as we're able to sort of differentiate ourselves from the crowd, our clients might become more and more confident and comfortable in that sort of discussion with us. The discussions, by the way, are ongoing. We just haven't seen the execution at scale yet in terms of those.
Hi, Ken Rump from Jefferies. Question for Alan. Ubisoft make a lot of the kind of teamwork and cross-disciplinary teams. They also, on wildlife, for instance, they made a point about how, as you go up a mountain, you meet different wildlife and stuff like this. That's how detailed it all is. How do you fit into that, in a sense? John talked a bit about how they work with Turn 10. So how are you working in that kind of seamless cross-disciplinary way with Ubi?
Yeah, so a huge part of when we spin onto any franchise, even before, almost as soon as we sign the contract, even before we set up the development environments, as we're ramping our team around, the first thing that we're doing is familiarizing our team and our designers and producers with the franchise sensibilities. So we're picking up all the previous games, we're understanding all the sensibilities that it set in realism, as you said, historical accuracy and also geographic accuracy, everything else, so that everything that we can do from the time that we engage with the partner is as closely aligned already with their sensibilities so that we can, as quickly as possible, kind of like be developing into the game. So it's really all about understanding what the franchise is about, doing our homework and becoming familiar with it, and then once we are actually collaborating with the partner, aligning those two things as closely as possible, as quickly as possible.
Hi, can I just ask how you go about pricing a co-development or full game development type of contract, and would you ever consider something like a revenue share model?
Maybe I'll do that. So obviously, specific engagements with specific clients are off limits in terms of giving you too much detail into the commercials around those. In terms of rev share, so first of all, if you consider game development, now it's very. I actually ran a software development business for a while, and the nice thing about software development is you can actually specify right up front exactly what you're going to be delivering, and then it's a question of delivering to the brief. The difficulty with game development is you often don't really know the game you're going to end up with until you get into it, and you kind of find this fun factor and you find the engagement. So it's very important in all our engagements to have that flexibility. So the contractual nature of it needs to allow a certain degree of flexibility, because you've got to be able to input to the game. Your client has got to be able to ask you to actually take on a bigger chunk of the work than perhaps they were originally envisaging. When it comes to rev share, what we don't want to do is to risk our own capital in making games. We're very set in our role within the industry of providing a service to our clients. So one of the key differentiators, we believe, between, say, a publisher and the sort of work that we do is that we don't take that risk. The publisher takes the risk to commit $100 million to a development project, expecting to be able to make that back and hopefully, 10, 100 times more when they get that game to market. So it's inappropriate, I think, for us to do work for free in exchange for a back-end royalty. We do, however, have engagements where we do have a back-end royalty arrangement. It's usually fairly small, but it's normally as a kind of an incentive to produce the best possible game we can produce, rather than in compensation for us doing work at a heavily discounted rate or for free.
It's Natasha Brilliant from Citi. I just wanted to get your experience on what it was like to actually join Keywords. You've touched upon some of the benefits and things that go well, but were there any challenges that you encountered? Sorry. So I'm not asking you. And, how quickly did you feel that you were sort of fully integrated, within the first month, or did it take a year to ramp up? Just sort of keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Is a question for me?
Well,
who wants to answer?
Why don't you start with John?
Sure.
So, from my perspective, I've worked in different sort of game development environments, from work for hire to kind of self-publishing to and really the work for hire. I'm a designer by trade, and from a creative perspective, work for hire is very exciting because you get to work with lots of different partners and lots of different IP, and you could be doing one thing from one year to the next, which is which is quite different. So when we initially started talking to Keywords about becoming part of the Keywords family, it felt like a very natural fit because the business model was the same. So from my perspective, as an independent joining Keywords, we didn't really change the way we operated. All the things that were good about being a work for hire studio were still there. None of that changed, but we didn't have the fear of being, a kind of small independent studio who could live or die based on whether the next project's cancelled or not. So for me, it was great because the business that I love didn't change, but we had this security which Keywords provided, and we also became part of a family. And the whole cross collaboration, aspect of it is really great. It's nice to, build those relationships with other studios. It's nice to, be able to pick up the phone and ask someone for support rather than having to go out and start building new relationships. So for me, it's been very positive, and the changes have all been positive, and the things I loved about working for Electric Square as an independent work for hire company, are still there now that we're part of Keywords.
John, does that love extend to the monthly reporting cycle?
That's my favourite part.
Good answer, John. Just quickly add on that. I think in the way that we kind of work together with the client, it's pretty much the same. And I think the client relationship is very much respected within the group. We have very strong relationship with Ubisoft, and Sperasoft has built those relationships over the years. So, on the day-to-day basis, from the dev team point of view, it doesn't really change anything, really. And I think, in a way, we feel we are actually more empowered, like the example that we mentioned. If it was not for Keywords, we wouldn't be able to actually get the additional support from the other groups. And actually now we are contributing the game in a more meaningful way and raising the quality of the game. And I think the team is really, really proud of that. I don't get involved with monthly reports, so I don't really have that aspect. Like, from my point of view, it's business as usual.
Just a quick one, if I may. Can I just ask, when you've created these amazing animals and characters and you deliver them, who owns the code? Where does the IP sit? Can you reuse all of that work in some way that's been put into them?
Well, yeah. The answer is no.
You're stealing all my glory. I could have said that just as well.
I just wanted to make sure you were saying the same thing. No, the answer is no. It's very much our client's IP. So work we do is on a work for hire basis. The code that we produce, the assets that we produce, those are all vested in our clients.
There is an exception with Reactor, in so much as we are investing in tools and technology which will allow us to build games faster and better than our competitors, and that is technology which we own.
Correct. And I mean, Jamie talked about the game engine that D3T have built, for instance. I don't want you to start thinking that this is some sort of competitor for Unity or Unreal, because it's not, but it is a very competent code base that helps D3T do their porting activities in particular very, very efficiently. And that is obviously proprietary technology. And we have lots of those sort of examples. But we are providing service across all of Keywords, where the work that we do tends to be for the client, and it is the client's IP at the end of the day.
I was just wondering why it seems like most of your game development studios have recreated many of the same service lines as the larger group. Electric Square has art, QA, audio, analytics, and community management internally. Why?
It's a question of scale. So I think when you're a tight-knit development house, you need all of those skill sets present physically alongside each other. When you get to bigger scale support and operation, that's when you can start extending out using the wider Keywords services. I might have stolen your...
I was going to say, Dev QA that we have in Electric Square perform a different function than functionality QA. So we'll have a couple of guys per game team who are verifying builds that go out externally to clients. They'll be testing specific features which programmers have developed, and they need to be in the dev area because there's a very close sort of a feedback loop between the QA staff we have on site and the developers who are building those features. So the function that the larger QA teams, perform within the QA service line is very different. Functionality QA is very different than development QA.
Yeah, you need that glue that brings the team together. So even if you're using a large amount of external art resource, you still need art direction and senior art actually on the development team there in the office, living, breathing day to day with the development team, and to act as an interface to work with the external resources as well.
Okay, I think that's it for Q&A. So thank you very much, guys. So it's now my great pleasure to welcome to the stage one of our very newest additions to the Keywords family. This is the creative marketing agency Itchy, represented by Liz Corliss. So Liz, having just joined in December, I think it was November, December, I can't remember when, and here she is on stage at the London Stock Exchange. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you. I'm here today to introduce to you what was my creative agency, Itchy Worldwide. So I set the agency up about 10 years ago, and our core focus is on games, but we also work with leading entertainment and youth brands as well. And our gaming clients love that we work outside of gaming, and our non-gaming clients love that we work within gaming because it's seen as really, really cool. In terms of our services, so unlike the other agencies within our service line, we actually work really early on in the game development process. So we get on board with our clients, from a strategic standpoint, super early to work out that market rollout. And I'll be coming on to actually that process in just a moment. And then off the back of that, we do then roll that out into branding, design, video, and social content as well. And I'll be able to show you some of that work later too. And then just in terms of our ethos as an agency, we do really feel that, repeat work is just as important as new business. In fact, we thrive off it. So our very first client from 10 years ago is still our client today. So we're really proud of that. So coming on to that approach, it was really hard to get this all into one slide, and hopefully you guys won't be more baffled at the end of it. So it is very much a dual process, but with a singular approach to it. So we have early stage engagement, which is what I was talking about just a moment ago. So this could be working on a product anything up to 3 years out from launch, so like really, really early. And then the other way that we work is on standalone or campaign work. So again, it's a very different way of working, and it can be from brief to delivery, anything from 6 to 9 months or 6 to 9 weeks, or, oh my God, help us, 6 to 9 days. That has happened before as well. So just coming back to this early stage engagement. So really how this breaks down is the initial stage of strategy, the proposition, the branding, really working out what that brand's tenets are, what can that brand only do. And sometimes we even actually work out what the game itself looks like. So we're currently working on a brief with a client, working out what is that game, what's the look and feel of that game, which is really exciting. Then we can either, pass off a kind of a brand and campaign style guide that then our clients can use with other partners and internally, or we can take that and actually work on, creative executions as well. But whatever happens, we are really well positioned actually to do that work. Going back to the other way of working, so this usually is embracing a core idea or message that's already there, it's already existing, and it's very much about making, a marquee asset or suite of assets with really high production value. And, the KPIs are focused around audience cut through, engagement, views, that kind of thing. But whatever we do, there is a singular approach to it, and that is strategically armed creative. So we live and die by this in the agency. What does it mean? So clarity of concept. So that's really, drilling down, distilling that message, working out, what can that product do that no other product can. Brand cohesion, so respecting what's already there. We're not trying to redesign the wheel with our campaigns. If there's something there that the clients love, we're going to stick with that. It's very rarely that a client comes to you and go, we hate everything about our brand, or we have nothing about our product. If they do, I'll be a bit like, I'm not sure I want to work with you guys. There's always something there that's existing. And then creative accountability. It's really important that we can, put our name by what we create. So we really believe in our work. And sometimes that means, challenging a client's brief and saying, actually, we think it needs to be this. But really, working in this way, the most important part of it is actually it completely, it doesn't completely, but it goes some way to remove creative becoming subjective. And in a world where, our clients, they have so many stakeholders now, you've got the studio, you've got the publisher, and then you'll have so many other people involved. You might have licensors. If we can all lock the strategy really early on in the approach, then the creative, as long as we hold it up against the strategy, if somebody doesn't like it or their husband at home doesn't like it, it doesn't matter, because actually, we all know that that's going to work. And having worked in performance marketing for our clients, we do a lot of that for many of our gaming clients, especially app gaming. You really find that actually sometimes it's the creative that you really don't like that actually performs the best, which is really disappointing, but it does happen. So I'm going to take you through a few examples of some projects that we've worked on. The first one, focusing on that really early stage engagement was for a game called Metro Exodus, and this was the third game in a highly successful gaming IP series. So we've actually worked on this product for 10 years, and it was the very first product that we worked on. So we began really early on this, Q4 2016, working on the strategy. And then we really drilled in with the studio, with 4A Games and Deep Silver, to work out what is the game, what can Metro do that no other game can do. And then actually we then worked with them on a 360 campaign. So we rolled it out into a huge suite of assets. And interestingly enough, the other agency working on it was Fire Without Smoke, and you'll be hearing from them later. So I'm just going to play a video now, a really short video that focuses on a game asset that we created around the weapons of the game, and really showing off what can Metro do that no other game can do. Well, it's all about the weapons in this game. So here you go.
These special weapons can always be equipped for missions when stealth is a must. The ability to also craft standard and incendiary ammunition from salvage and scrap makes these improvised works of art indispensable. With a wide range of weapons available, it's down to you to find the right choice that fits the situation and your style of play, giving yourself options to adapt and think on your feet.
So on to my second work example. So this falls into that second way of working standalone creative. So this was for Zynga's Natural Motion's CSR2. It's one of the most successful app mobile games out there, recently. And this was very much about creating this amazing, really standout live action asset. We filmed this on a lot in LA. It was a really cool shoot. And creating this asset that's basically just going to get total cut through and get people really interested in downloading the game. The gameplay of the game itself, it's great, but you're never going to get something that kind of stands out like this with gameplay. So I'm just going to play that for you now. So that was actually the best performing asset they've ever created for CSR2, so they were really happy with it. We also work with... Thank you. We're all just so stunned by how good it was. So yeah, and we also work with Natural Motion on loads of social content, most of it live action. So yeah, we really enjoyed that project. And coming on to my final example, which again is more focused around a standalone launch campaign, which was for PlayStation's Blood and Truth. So this is a VR game, and the real challenge with it was how do we create that immersive experience within a TV ad and trailer for gamers? How do we make them really feel like they're in that game? Because that's what virtual reality is all about. It's about having a more immersive experience. We also repurposed the asset that we created into social content, which we do a lot, and it just delivers extra value for our clients on the assets that they create, because I'm sure you can understand these videos, they do have quite a high price point, and so we like to deliver as much value as possible to our clients with them. So I'm just going to play this for you now.
For the players.
So that's actually the biggest PSVR game to date. So it's a really great brief to work on. So looking ahead, obviously, this is really important for us. We've just joined Keywords. We're like super fresh with the new kids on the block, and we're really keen to see how we can take the business forward from here. So it's really for us, about respecting our agency culture, which Keywords are really, really great with, and being able to continue to develop our brand and to just keep growing essentially. But also it's about us being able to expand our client base. And already we're only 2 months in, and we're already having meetings that are being set up for us with gaming companies that we've always wanted to work with. That's already happening, which is really exciting. But also, there's a really, amazing opportunity for us to be able to collaborate more with other studios within Keywords, notably the most within our own service line. So when we announced the acquisition to our clients, there were 1 or 2 of them who were so excited to hear more, because they'd really like to actually, marry us up with other agencies and actually bring us together, to work more knitted together than we would normally be. Now we're part of the same family. And equally, on announcing the acquisition, we had loads of clients, 3 or 4 actually, come to us and say, this is great news. Can you put me in touch with someone who can tell me more about Keywords localization service or their testing service? So, that's been really great. But ultimately, it's just about expanding more aggressively into 2020 and beyond, and really leveraging the fact that we are now part of such a huge, global company, but we're still, the same company that we were, but we just have that bigger infrastructure to really give us so many more opportunities. And really, as a company, it's all about leveling up. So thank you very much for your time and for listening to me today. I'm going to pass you over now to Richard from Fire Without Smoke, who are an incredible agency who I have admired from afar for a really long time. So it's now really nice to be part of the same family. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't feel I really need to say anything now. Thank you, Liz. I'm Richard Parnes from Fire Without Smoke. We're a creative agency bought by Keywords back in 2018, and I'm here to talk to you today about how a trailer is made. Quick overview of Fire Without Smoke. We are based in London and Montreal, massively into the games that we make, lots and lots of clients across the world, 0 staff turnover, which I put down to the wonderful company culture we have, or Stockholm Syndrome. And we provide services ranging from branding, print and video, but specifically today I want to talk to you about the video content that we make, and that is trailers. So what is it that is unique about making a gameplay trailer? Well, unlike other trailers that you may see for a Tarantino film, where the content is generated on set as part of the script and delivered to the agency, who have to cut up what they can with what they're provided, we make the movie. We get the game builds, we generate the content, and we shoot what we need to make the assets that we've workshopped with the client to deliver for the audience. We're the script writers. We write what dialogue will be presented by the characters. We will dictate what happens, where it's shot. We have a lot more control than your ordinary trailer making. We're the actors. We control what the puppets do. We make sure that the script and narrative is delivering the messages that our characters need to provide to sell the message of the game. And we're the director. We choose what happens and when it happens. But most importantly, we're the audience. I'm Platinum in League of Legends. I'm very proud of it. My team love the games that they play, and of a Friday night, they'll be playing Rainbow Six well into the wee hours because we really do care about the products that we're crafting. Explaining all of this is one thing, but I thought I would show you instead what our work looks like. A lot of assassins. So what do we do that's different, specifically about what goes into our trailers and what makes us unique? One of the things is my team thinking like filmmakers. And this boils down to the camera that we have. We work with our clients to design an in-engine camera a lot of the time, honing the tools that they have. They'll embed it in the code. A lot of our clients refer to the in-game camera as the FWS cam or the FWS cam because we've been so integral in implementing it. From level of detail to depth of field, the different lenses, we help inform the tools that we use so that we know we can get the best product. The creative is based off of our team of script writers and our creatives who will think about it like a film. You have the rises, the falls, the dialogues. What music do you use to really embody the feeling you're trying to get across? All of this messaging is very much thinking like, I want to see a big blockbuster experience, and how do I get the excitement of that distilled into a script? And then finally, it's my team. My team are trained cinematographers who've gone to some of the most prestigious film schools in the world. They will be people who monkey around on the weekends and film short videos with their friends and play around with the latest cameras. They love the real physical product, which puts them cinematographically at an advantage. All of that talent married up with our in-engine expertise. So it's all well and good being a filmmaker in your spare time and what you've trained to do, but being technically proficient is a very necessary part of the in-engine trailers that we produce. So build proficiency. We are engine agnostic. Give us an engine and we will find a way to make the most beautiful content possible. Regardless of what it is, how proprietary it is to our clients, we will go in there and we will produce content that astounds. And that makes up our perfect mix. We have our team of gamers who love the product. We have our filmmakers who have the eye, and we have the technical skill set of our team to be able to put all of that together within the world of video games, the technical engine specificities that's required. And then finally, the execution. The tech that we put together to make our workflows work and generate our footage. Basically, as soon as we open the box, we look at it and we go, well, that's out of date. It's a constant updating process of making sure that we have the latest available tech so that we can keep up with 4K, 8K, and whatever ridiculous number you want to put in front of the letter K and where it's going. All of this described may not necessarily make sense unless I put it in the timeline of the eyes of a client. What I'm describing to you is a very rough indication of what a trailer timeline would look like. Every trailer is a unique and beautiful piece of art that needs to be thought about individually, but this is the top line. So the creative, where we sit and come up with the idea, is about 1 to 2 weeks. The cinematography, which is going into the game and location scouting and figuring out what time of day is best to shoot the car chase at, which part of ancient Greece and which mountain we should use to film, as well as the technical stress testing, which is massively time consuming. It's no use if your lead character keeps falling through the floor in the ocean. This cinematography then is coupled with the shoot, which is the process of filming it, where our cinematographers will go in engine and either through keyframing or using marketing builds, produce the video footage that will go into the post-production. The shoot and the cinematography will take 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, coupled with post-production, which runs in tandem with the shoot, which is the edit and the motion graphics, essentially articulating the video that we're getting. This again can run in tandem as another 2 to 4 weeks. And then finally, you've got your delivery, which is the color grading, the sound mixing. Is it going on Instagram? Is it going in the cinema? How many languages is it being localized in? All of this needs to be thought as part of the final full stop of the process, which again is another week. So atypically, it's a 4 to 8 week process that would produce an in-engine trailer that we're proud of. Now, finally, the current workings between us and the marketing studios has been, before Keywords came along, a system which we've learned as we've gone along with certain limitations, which is we'll get a game build, we'll do some tweaking our side to the best of our abilities, but we're not engineers. Sometimes we're animators, but it's not our bread and butter. So what Keywords has allowed us to do is to expand. In the art studios, it now gives us animation capabilities. If we need a character's hair waving in the wind to add a bit of dramatic effect for a close-up shot, we can now reach out to one of those studios who can do that for us. And even more excitingly is the developer aspect and co-devs who are well-versed in the engines on a more technical level than we are. We're working on some really exciting opportunities at the moment, using the Keyword studios to go in engine and put in animations and tweak stuff. But a really beautiful example of this is something that I'm really pleased to introduce Holly from Trailer Farm about, who can show you exactly what I'm talking about. And that's that. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I'm Holly, and I am the Director of Operations at the Trailer Farm. I'm here to tell you about how a rather small agency from Brighton was able to deliver a 2-time award-winning trailer for the IP Borderlands 3 for Gearbox Software. So just to set the scene, we are a 25 in-house team. We are a full-service creative agency and production house. We specialise in video production for the games industry. We are born from the closure of BlackRock Studios, a subsidiary for Disney Interactive. Our core team have worked in AAA. What that actually means is part of our culture is we are able to be clever and reactive and roll with the punches, similar to all of those stories that the engineering teams were telling you about earlier on in today. We have, over this 9 years, we've carved out a space in the industry that is kind of unique to what we've done. At first, doing projects for friends and previous colleagues, we've built up and generated new work and taken calculated risks along the way, but ultimately letting our work speak for itself. So to tell you about the story of Happy Together, what I need to do is actually tell you the whole story of how it became a project. We met Gearbox Software in 2018 at XDS in Vancouver. We talked about our real-time rendering solution being able, much like Richard said earlier, being able to work within the engine to produce marketing assets and content, similar to cinematics that you see within the game. And that was kind of it. We thought, okay, well, that's fantastic, that's great. In March at GDC, they had a brief. They had a brief for 2D animatic work. So this is taking a storyboard, a set of storyboards for 4 character trailers, so introducing their 4 hero characters from the game and turning them into what is known as an animatic. So that's a movie storyboard, and it's usually used to develop and work into the pacing and the timing. we kicked off the project. We were delighted to be working on Borderlands 3. The Gearbox came to us and said, do you have the capacity to extend to take it to a 3D blockout? So that's getting set up on the systems, working within the engine and pulling all of the assets and characters and props and everything into the scenes to be able to put it into that 3D environment. Absolutely, of course, it's a dream. This is wonderful. This then became taking the trailers to final. This is because I believe, our capability of the trust that we developed through this engagement, that is a much bigger task than just doing the 3D blockout. We looked at this point to our sister studios within Keywords for support. We were able to ramp up within particular areas. The next email came in probably, a few days after we'd agreed the contract, the scope of work, the schedule, and it said, we have another trailer. So we have another trailer and we have a piece of 2D concept art to try and explain what we have. It takes inspiration from Busby Berkeley. So for those of you who don't know, there's some images here. There's complex geometric patterns, there's props, there's fantasy elements. The idea is that it's to communicate the co-op nature of Borderlands 3. There's loot explosions that happen everywhere. There's a huge gun barrel that towers above everything with loot boxes exploding up around the sides. It's amazing. It's incredible. And we wonder, how are we going to be able to do this? So the other aspect that we needed to work out was they wanted it to be a one-shot concept. What that means, if anyone's been to the cinema recently and seen the film 1917, is that it's a single camera following the action throughout the entire duration of the piece. There's no hard cuts. There's no shortcuts, essentially. It's the trifecta of complexity, both on a cinematic scale, on a technical scale, and actually planning the production. They have another trailer and it needs to be delivered before all the other trailers. So any schedules and any plans that we previously put together needs to entirely go out the window and we need to replan. So the next stage for us was to do a motion capture session. This was to supplement any of the in-game animations that were within the engine. This is the image you can see down the side. We went up to Pinewood Studios. It was an incredibly fun day. And from there, we received the animation data that came out of it. And this was our pipeline. Now, it's complex. The idea is not to talk you through anything, but just to showcase exactly how complex it was. We worked with 3 other Keyword studios to enable us to produce this. So we have Mindwalk up here. They worked on the mocap data processing and cleaning, as well as some hand animation, so making sure that things were kind of working exactly how you need. We have Laksha Digital down here. Again, hand animation, focusing more on the kind of monster elements rather than the actual stuff that could have been mocapped. And then the other studio that we worked with was Liquid Development. So these guys actually have a very long-standing relationship with Gearbox Software. They've been working on the Borderlands IP for a number of years, and actually they were already linked up within their version control, within their systems, and in fact they've been making all of the assets to go into the game. So we took all of the mocap data, we processed it, it came over to Trailer Farm, where we ran through a number of different disciplines and delivered shots and scenes over to Liquid. They populated it, it came back. Doesn't explain it. What I can do is show you this. So this was 24 hours, a day in the life of producing the trailer. So we're here, GMT is right in the middle. Mindwalk and Laksha would be working ahead of us. They would make a submission just before a call that we would have with them at 9:30 in the morning. At that point, we would do animation review, and then we'd brief for the next round of tasks. We would then pick up, we'd work on that cinematic assembly, so getting that animation data into those shots and scenes within the engine, ready for our daily client review, which would happen at 4:30. At 5:30, we would then hop onto a call with Liquid, where we would then brief them on what they needed to do into the night, where they had a development. And they had a whole cycle and then would deliver at the end of their day. We had just under 11 minutes of cinematic work to produce. We had 5 trailers to deliver, and there were a total of 125 shots that needed to go both through this initially, but also within the feedback loops and everything that was required. And we had 14 weeks. At its largest, we had a total number of 40 Keywordians working together on the project, which isn't bad for a small studio in Brighton. And so we have some results. Obviously, we did it. I'm here, still standing. We actually managed to scale our team size from 14 people working in-house up to 40, as I mentioned. Nothing would have been possible without being part of Keywords. So we worked with trusted studios as part of this. There were no NDAs that needed to be issued. We didn't have to go through that careful ramp up. We had 14 weeks. All of the studios within the art service line were aware of Gearbox Software as a client. They were aware of the IP. If not, they were already working on it. And they were also aware of what it was exactly that we needed to achieve. We safeguarded 27 other projects in the studio over the total of the 4-month engagement that we worked with Gearbox on this. The inter-studio relationships that have blossomed from this exist at every level. So not only from studio head to studio head, biz dev, that exist at kind of events like this and other conferences, but producer to producer, as well as artist to artist. We won 2 awards. So we actually won the trailer. Won 2 awards, which were the Clio Entertainment Award, a very high-profile award. So a silver in CGI trailer audiovisual and a bronze in the sound design. And finally, we set a level of quality and competency with Gearbox through not only the work we were able to produce collectively together as a team, but the main thing was the fact that we were their contact. We had one check-in with them every day, and we had this whole production behind the scenes that you've seen a little bit into of how it worked. And that really exists kind of to today. So we've worked with Gearbox on a number of other projects, and actually we do continue to speak on an ongoing basis every day. So I better let you watch the trailer, really. After this, we've got a Q&A session, so we're going to gather on the sofa after that.
Imagine me and you, I do. I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold her tight. So happy together. How they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me. So happy, so happy together. How is the weather? How they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me. So happy together, so happy together. How is the weather? So happy together, we're happy together.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Hi, Ken Rumpf again. Firstly, congratulations to Trailer Farm. That was breathtaking, as they say. Outstanding trailer of last year. I asked the guys in Montreal at Sunnyside Up, how do you compete sometimes on a job? You know, might someone be going to Trailer Farm, Sunnyside, Fire Without Smoke? How do you organise that?
Go ahead. Who's going to go? Richard.
Sure. Yes, we absolutely do compete creatively. Creativity is a muscle, and the more that you flex it, the stronger it gets. That it's wonderful that we're competing against each other. We don't compete against each other financially. So the level of interaction that we have, the client will come to all of us, will be based on the creative that we put forward. And it's great because it means there's a likelihood that one of us is going to bring it to the Keywords group.
Can I just ask, you've said this is an area that you're targeting for acquisitions and further expansion. Do you see yourself moving into active media buying as well?
That I don't know. I mean, obviously, where Keywords really thrives is where you've got this mix of creativity and technical sort of complexity. So the more we get away from any sort of technical aspect, I think if we did get there, it would be later rather than sooner. And I don't really know what the future of our marketing services will be as we grow them. But I would be surprised if we dive into the acquisition side of things as separate from user acquisition, for instance, which is quite technically based these days, but actually ad buying, I'm not sure that's going to be our first step.
Hi, it's Natasha from Citi. When you are thinking about acquisitions, are you coming up against some of the more traditional ad agencies? Do you find yourself competing against those for these sorts of assets, or?
Not so far, at least. So there are obviously some big advertising agencies in the space. In fact, some of these guys almost certainly work with some of those larger agencies. So they will come to specialist companies like ourselves to create the assets. This is our domain. There are no big advertising agencies that are specialized in games, as far as I'm aware. So what they do have is they have a geographic footprint and an ability to execute around the world in a way that our clients definitely need. What we hope we can do is to produce an agency very specific to the video games industry that also has that geographic footprint that our clients so value. And I think if we can do that, we'll have something truly unique. It's not as if we don't already have a bunch of very unique and talented studios as it is.
I think probably it's useful to repeat that question earlier on of, what changed post the acquisition? What were the bad things? I memorably, Richard's partner, I asked, why did you sell the business? And he said, Andrew bought me a Ferrari. I don't get the feeling he drives it a lot. So just what changed? Richard mentioned, no staff turnover and so on. So, what the good and bad bits would be good.
There actually isn't really any. There's no bad bits.
Yes.
There really isn't. And people think that we often that's a managed answer, but there genuinely isn't. When I talk about the inter-studio relationships that have been made, they are with amazing, highly skilled human beings who are able to produce just the most amazing content for the entertainment industry. It's fantastic.
I think as well, just being new, right before the acquisition, well, actually leading up to acquisition, Keywords positively encouraged me to, meet one-on-one with previous sellers to actually get a real kind of, gloves off view on everything about joining the Keywords family. And everybody said, it's great, the financial reporting's a bit, but, everything else is great. And has the target light come off my head now? Is that gone? But, it genuinely, so far, we're only a couple of months in, but it has been amazing. I think the thing that's baffled me the most is there's so many people to meet and so many, new names to learn. But, already we're feeling the benefit of it, just having that bigger support system there. So genuinely, there hasn't been anything bad as yet, but ask me next year, and I'll give you an honest answer then as well.
It is a shame that Ashley Liu couldn't be here today. We are all sat in the art service line, and it's an active part of her role that she makes us feel included and work together, and the lengths that she's gone to make sure that any negatives is diminished. It's all positive.
Yeah, well done, Ashley. Yes.
Richard Williamson from Edison again. I just wanted to ask about the broader marketing piece. So we've got the creatives here, but in terms of, you mentioned free-to-play titles earlier, so cost-effective user acquisition, some of the more performance marketing elements of marketing. Is that a core area for development, or do you have existing expertise in that area? Or
no, we may have some expertise in small doses somewhere, but no, it's not something that we would be famous for. And obviously, in developing our marketing services business, just as we've been developing our other service lines, we want to be famous for the things that we do. So developing them to scale and with the depth of expertise and the breadth of capability is where we are going to try and take the marketing services business. So where we feel we can achieve that and where we think those skill sets are a necessary part of being able to become this kind of one-stop shop for all things marketing, to the extent that that's valued by our clients, that's where you should expect us to go. I think that's time. Over to John, our CFO.
One of the downsides of working for Keywords is you hear all that cool stuff and then the CFO stands up and starts talking to you about net margins. And I'm afraid the reporting packs are here to stay. So look, before we move into sort of closing remarks, I did want to just provide a little bit more colour on two aspects of the performance for 2019, margins and the cash performance. Clearly, as you're all aware, 2019, we have had a reduction in our margin. 2018 EBITDA margins of 17.4%, and they will be around 15.2% when we report our numbers in 3 months' time, just over a 2 percentage point reduction. But I did want to just provide a little bit more colour on what's driving that. We've spoken to most of you about some of the dynamics in our business this year. Starting with the underperforming fixed price contract that we've been dealing with this year. This was a contract that we entered into around the time of an acquisition. It was a fixed price contract, and it really should have delivered almost twice the revenues for the level of resources that were put into that contract. And that did drag our margins down by about 0.6 percentage points in 2019. I'm pleased to say that contract is now behind us. It was finalised at the end of 2019, so that shouldn't be a headwind as we go into 2020. We've also made some early stage investments in some early stage technology businesses in 2018. These are pre-revenue business. They've got some very exciting opportunities for growth in the future, but we've had to invest in those to develop them further and bring them to market. And that's about a 0.4 percentage point worth of margin in terms of investment. And that wasn't in our cost base when you looked at the business in 2018. We've talked a lot about the growth that we've experienced in our business, and we've invested behind that growth. And that's had two elements to it. When you're growing at 30% plus in a business like functional testing, which is very reliant on people and seats and people working behind computers, we've had to invest in our facilities and expansion of facilities. And for those of you that were in Montreal, you would have seen the 2 floors of space that we've expanded into in that building. We've opened up operations and facilities in Mexico, in Katowice, and that takes time to come on stream. And in the early stages, they are not as efficient and operational as you are in a more mature environment. But we've also had some short-term inefficiencies that have been introduced into the business. Just growing at that pace is not easy to do optimally. From recruiting, vast numbers of people in Canada, the training effort that goes in, all of the testers do go through a training process for about a week. And even more short-term issues where we're having to find short-term space so that we can manage the work while the longer-term expansion of facilities come on track. And that was about 0.4 percentage points of margin for those items. And then finally, the OPEX investment. Someone referred to the word glue. We are a global business. We're trying to create a platform, and there is an element of back office support and glue that you need to support these businesses and help them free them up so they can focus on some of the fantastic work that we've seen today. So we have invested in our regional capabilities. For those in Montreal, will have seen the HR functions, the regional finance functions. Particularly important are the investments that we've been making in the technology to support the businesses, and also the security, which is a really, really important differentiator for us and really important to our publishing clients. So moving into 2020, we said that we would expect the margins to incrementally track back towards the sort of historical levels that we've been operating at, 14.5%, 15%. And we saw a little bit of margin improvement coming through in the second half of 2019. We would expect that to continue. Obviously, we don't have the underperforming contract. That shouldn't be a headwind as we go into 2020. We are going to continue to invest behind these technologies. These are arguably growth engines of years 2, 3, 4 in the future, but we will evaluate clearly those as we go through 2020. We are going to invest in the growth, but we should start to be able to leverage the growth that or the investments we've already made. As Matt said, we're going to get better at operationalizing some of those investments that we made in 2020, which will help improve our margin position. And from an OPEX perspective, I wouldn't say we've completely built the platform that we need, but certainly the pace of investment will slow down. There's a bit of run rate that will come through, but we expect to see those investments leverage as we go through 2020. Moving on to cash flow, I just thought it would be helpful to provide a little bit more detail and granularity to the cash flow performance for 2019 and really reassure you that this business still generates cash. It is still generating cash. But there are a couple of dynamics to the performance this year that I did want to call out. As you can see, we delivered adjusted free cash flow in 2019 of around 14 million euros. That's what I call adjusted free cash flow, is after working capital, tax and interest. It's really before the discretionary stuff that you have to choose on in terms of how you invest your money. So acquisition spend and dividend. That was a little bit lower than 2018. And there were two key drivers for that, which I've tried to call out in the middle there. The first is you guys will probably be aware that in certain parts of our business, we enjoy a labour credit from the government. So particularly in Montreal in Canada and in certain parts of our business in the UK. Those labour credits, we earn them and we recognise them as we do the work, but we don't get to collect the money until the following year. And because we've grown so strongly, in a normal year, the amount you collect for the previous year roughly equals the amount that you accrue in the current year. Because we've experienced such strong growth in those service lines, particularly functional testing and game development, that means that we've got a higher receivable. It is a timing difference. We will collect the cash next year, but it does create this sort of lag in your working capital cycle. The second one, hopefully no one will be surprised to see that we have invested in the CapEx. I actually refer to this more like RevEx. In order to deliver revenue, in order to put new seats into studios, you've also got to invest in the kit that the guys are using to do the work, whether that's the technology, the testing equipment. And so CapEx is running ahead of depreciation. And there's about a 3 million increase in the CapEx spend year over year. And those two items combined broadly account for the reduction in the free cash flow. As Andrew mentioned, we've had 32 million of acquisition spend. That also included about 15 million of deferred consideration for acquisitions we made in previous periods. We like paying deferred consideration. It means that the businesses have performed well. But that is an additional cash that's come through in the back half of 2019. And what I've tried to do is really to unpick those items. And if you add back those dynamics that I've just went through and look at it on an underlying basis, this is a business that continues to generate pretty decent levels of underlying cash flow and broadly in line with the sorts of generation that we've seen in 2018 and before. So to move on and just to wrap up today, I've certainly enjoyed today and I've got more trailers that I can go home and show my kids, which is great. But hopefully what you've started to see today is that the creation of this platform is actually creating really strong points of differentiation for the Keywords business in the context of what is a pretty fragmented industry. Normally, when you think of fragmentation, you think of low barriers to entry, but we've actually created, I think, very high barriers to entry, whether that's from scale, being of a size where you are a trusted supplier to big publishers, and they've got increased trust in you being able to perform the work on a flexible basis when they need it. You've got the people available. The global presence, we've now got a global position in most of our service lines where we're close to the customers, but more importantly, often close to the talent. And certainly, if you look at something like game development, talent acquisition and being able to fund your business with talented workforce is really, really important if you want to scale. Certainly demonstrated to me that we've got deep technical expertise, but we've also got breadth of expertise having created this cross-platform offering, which means that we are pretty much the only one-stop shop in town if someone did want to take advantage of all the services that we can offer. Technology investments, you've seen that we need to continue to invest in technology. It's so important to be at the cutting edge to support our clients. And also, I think financial strength is important. You've seen a little bit about how fragile some of the smaller single studios can be. And when you put multiple studios together, there's a resilience that is important in terms of being able to scale and grow, but also I think important to our clients who want a really reliable provider. And finally, very, very important that we've developed this reputation for quality. And if that didn't come through today, then we've done something wrong. You live by the quality of your last project, and there's a very, very strong culture of delivery within this business, which I think is a massive differentiator. So finally, I think this is for those that are Montreal, they will recognise this. I think it might become my old faithful, but I do think this really sums up what Keywords has been doing for the last 6 years. Small business, 16 million revenue, and really the catalyst for the scale and the investment was the IPO in 13. Since then, the business has grown by over 300 million. Of that, 200 million has come from M&A, acquired revenue. That is very, very important part of the strategy. 46 targeted acquisitions, but it is targeted, building out the platform so that we've got the right businesses in the right part of the world, and to build this platform so we can create scale within each of our service lines. But it's been very disciplined, and I'm sure, Andrew, you'll get a question on 2019 being a slightly quieter year. I have to be honest, from a CFO perspective, I think that's great, because we haven't chased after every deal that's out there. We could have bought a lot of businesses if we wanted to, but it's been very disciplined, it's very targeted, making sure we bring the right quality into the business. And at a 1.2 times revenue multiple, you would argue affordable as well. But importantly, complemented by very strong organic growth. I think it's probably a little bit higher than 15%, but throughout that period, we've actually added 100 million of revenue through organic revenue growth, which is massively important. And I think you've seen in some of our service lines, potentially a bit of an acceleration in some of that growth as we see some of the benefits of the platform coming through. So that's all from me. So I will hand back to Andrew for final comments.
Well, I really can't tell you how proud I am of this company of Keywords that we've built since 2013. I mean, it's a tremendous achievement, and I find myself humbled time and time again by the complete dedication and passion of Keywordians all around the world, some of whom you've heard from today, some of whom are brand new Keywordians but are already getting in the groove. So I'm personally absolutely chuffed to be able to stand up here and to have shared some of these case studies with you, and look forward to being able to do that again at our next Capital Markets Day, which I promise won't be every 2 months or every 3 months. So what should you expect from us for 2020 and beyond? So 2019 was actually a surprisingly Given how strongly we performed with 15% organic growth, you have to remember that that was in a market where we were very much in the tail end of the previous or the current console cycle. So fewer and fewer titles. If you look at the titles that were released into the holiday period, there were far fewer titles released in 2019 than there were in 2018 and so on. 2020, we're going to see a kind of a refresh as we look forward to the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox X Series or Series X coming on stream. And with that, all of the content that needs to be created for those devices. So I'm confident that Keywords, well, I know because we're already working on some of those contents. But as we move through the game development cycle, so more and more of our service lines will move from mostly working on the current generation content to more and more focusing on the new generation content. So 2020 is definitely a transition year. I think that's a good thing. But I would say that the big benefit of the console refresh is actually going to be 2021, 22, 23 or so, something like that. So we've got all of that to look forward to. Definitely expect continued strong organic growth from us. That's what we target ourselves on, and we love nothing better than being able to do more work for our existing clients and be able to welcome new clients into working with Keywords. Selective acquisitions. John said it was a bit of a quieter year in 2019. We didn't make as many acquisitions or spend as much money as historically we've done on acquisitions. I would say that it is very important to understand that Keywords is not your sort of classic roll-up story. There are many companies out there that we could be acquiring. We don't acquire for the sake of it. We're acquiring very specific assets to plug very specific services, expertise, geographic locations, and to execute on the strategies that have been put in place by each of the service line leaders that you heard from earlier on today. And finally, of course, I can feel it. I hope you got a sense for it, that this platform that we're building is really coming together. It's increasingly integrated. Our people are working across disciplines, across service lines to deliver the very best work we can for our clients. And that's our core focus. You know, we've talked about this culture of delivery, and that's what we all strive for. We all want to take the trust that's been put in us by our clients with these fantastic games that they let us work on and just do as much as we can for them, obviously within the constraints of budgets and time and everything else. So platform integration, we haven't focused on that much today, but please go and have a look at the Capital Markets Day session from Montreal if you haven't already done it, because there were some superb examples of how we integrate these various businesses. And the final point, which I can't underestimate, is the importance of scale. As we become larger, so our engagements with our clients become larger, and so we become seen as a different type of partner to our clients, far more strategic than ever before. And I think that's it. Thanks very much again for investing your time with us today. Thank you.